ताज़ा तरीन अपलोड्स की नोटिफिकेशन हासिल करने के लिए हमारे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें और साथ में दिए गए घंटी के निशान को दबाना ना भूलें।
Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Shri Ram Nam is Brahma, Vishnu and Shivru. He is Mahamantra, which is chanted by Maheshwar Shri Shivji. Shri Ganeshji is aware of its Mahima, and because of which Ganeshji is offered prayers before everyone else. Shri Ramji himself had liberated only one tapasvi's wife, Ahilya, whereas his name has liberated millions of people of their wicked minds. Every sin of this Kali Yuga can be washed off by only taking the name of Shri Ramcharit. Today, there is trouble spread across the globe. Entire innovation and strength of science is converting the whole world into a crematorium. Only the name of Shri Ramji can bring peace into this world, can spread the message of love. Please join me in chanting the names of Shri Ramji and Sita ji. Read and listen Shri Ram Charit Manas, which is created and written by Shri Tulsidas ji, and make your life happy and peaceful. Jai Shri Ram, Jai Siya Ram, Jai Siya Ram. Shri Ganeshaya Namaha, Shri RamCharit Manas. Descent 1, Bal Kand. I reverence Vani ji, the goddess of speech, and Vinayak ji, Lord Ganesha, the originators of sounds represented by the alphabet, of the multitudes of objects denoted by those sounds, of poetic sentiments as well as of meters, and the begetters of all blessings. I greet Goddess Parvati ji and her consort Bhagwan Shankar ji, embodiments of reverence and faith respectively, without which even the adept cannot perceive God enshrined in their very heart. I make obeisance to the eternal preceptor in the form of Lord Shankar ji, who is all wisdom, and resting on whose brow the crescent moon, though crooked in shape, is universally adored. I pay homage to the king of bards, Valmiki ji, and the chief of monkeys, Hanuman ji, of pure intelligence, both of whom sport in the holy woods in the shape of glories of Sita ji and Ram ji. I bow to Sita ji, the beloved consort of Shri Ramji, who is responsible for the creation, sustenance, and dissolution of the universe, removes afflictions, and begets all blessings. I adore Lord Hariji, known by the name of Shri Ramji, who is superior to and lies beyond all causes, whose Maya, elusive power, holds sway over the entire universe, including gods from Brahmaji, the creator, downwards, and demons, whose presence lends positive reality to the world of appearances, even as the false notion of serpent is entertained with reference to a rope, and whose feet are the only bark for those who are eager to cross the ocean of mundane existence. For the gratification of his own self, Tulsidas ji brings forth this very elegant composition relating in common practice the story of the Lord Raghus, which is in accord with the various Puranas, Vedas, and the Agams, that is, Tantras, and incorporates what has been recorded in the Ramayana of Valmiki ji and culled from some other sources. May Lord Ganesh Ji, the leader of Shivji's retinue, whose very thought ensures success, who carries on his shoulders the head of a beautiful elephant, who is a repository of wisdom and an abode of blessed qualities, shower his grace. May that merciful Lord, whose grace enables the dumb to wax eloquent and a cripple to ascend an inaccessible mountain, and who burns all the impurities of Kali Yuga, be moved to pity. May the Lord, who ever sleeps on the ocean of milk, and who is Swati, is a blue lotus, and has eyes resembling a pair of full-blown red lotuses, take up his abode in my bosom. May the crusher of Cupid, Bhagwan Shivji, whose form resembles in color the jasmine flower and the moon, who is the consort of goddess Parvati Ji and an abode of compassion, and who is fond of the afflicted, be gracious. I bow to the lotus feet of my Guru, who is an ocean of mercy and is no other than Shri Hariji himself in human form, and whose words are sunbeams, as it were, for dispersing the mass of darkness in the form of gross ignorance. I greet the pollen-like dust of the lotus feet of my preceptor, refulgent, fragrant, and flavored with love. It is a lovely powder of the life-giving herb, which allays the host of all the attendant ills of mundane existence. It adorns the body of a lucky person, even as white ashes beautify the person of Lord Shivji, and brings forth sweet blessings and joys. It rubs the dirt off the beautiful mirror in the shape of the devotee's heart. When applied to the forehead in the form of tilak, a religious mark, it attracts a host of virtues. The splendor of gems in the form of nails on the feet of the blessed Guruji unfolds divine vision in the heart by its very thought. The luster disperses the shades of infatuation. Highly blessed is he in whose bosom it shines. With its very appearance, the bright eyes of the mind get opened, and the attendant evils and sufferings of the night of mundane existence disappear. And gems and rubies in the shape of stories of Sri Ramji, both patent and hidden, wherever and in whatever mine they may be, come to light. As for instance, by applying to the eyes the miraculous salve known by the name of Siddhanjan, the eye salve of perfection, strivers, adepts as well as men of wisdom easily discover a host of mines on hilltops, in the midst of forests, and in bowels of the earth. The dust of the Guru's feet is a soft and agreeable salve, which is ambrosia, as it were, for the eyes and remedies the defects of vision. Having brightened my eyes of discernment thereby, I proceed to relate the story of Sri Ramji, which secures freedom from the bondage of mundane existence. First, I reverence the feet of Brahmanas, the very gods on earth, who are able to dispel all doubts born of ignorance. Then I make my loving obeisance in a polite language to the whole body of pious souls, the minds of all virtues. The conduct of holy men is noble as the career of the cotton plant, the fruit whereof is tasteless, white and fibrous, even as the doings of the saints yield results which are free from attachment, stainless and full of goodness. Even by suffering hardships in the form of ginning, spinning and weaving, the cotton plant covers others' faults and has thereby earned in the world a renown which is worthy of adoration. The assemblage of saints, which is all joy and felicity, is a moving Prayag, the king of all holy places, as it were. Devotion to Shri Ramji represents in this moving Prayag the stream of the holy Ganga, the river of the celestials, while the proceeding of an inquiry into the nature of Brahmaji, the Absolute, constitutes the Saraswati Ji, a subterranean stream of which is traditionally believed to join the Ganga and the Yamuna at Prayag, thus accounting for the name Triveni, which signifies a meeting place of three rivers. Discourses on karma or action consisting of injunctions and interdictions have been spoken of as the sacred Yamuna, a daughter of the sun god in her angelic form, washing the impurities of all Kali Yuga, while the anecdotes of Vishnuji and Shivji stand out as the triple stream known as Triveni, bringing joy and blessings to those who listen to them. Unwavering faith in their own creed constitutes the immortal banyan tree, and noble actions represent the royal court of that king of holy places. Easy of access to all on any day and at every place, this moving Prayag assuages the afflictions of those who resort to it with reverence. The king of holy places is beyond all description and supra-mundane in character. It bestows the reward immediately, and its glory is manifest. Men who, having heard the glory of this moving Prayag in the form of the assemblage of holy men, appreciate it with an enraptured mind and then take a plunge into it with extreme devotion, obtain the four rewards of human existence during their very lifetime. The result of an immersion into the sacred waters of this king of holy places is instantly perceived. Crows turn into cuckoos and herons into swans. Let no one marvel to hear this. The glory of contact with saints is no secret. Valmiki ji, Narad ji and Agastya ji, who was born of a pitcher, have related the story of their birth and transformation with their own lips. Of the various creatures, both animate and inanimate, living in this world, whether in water or on land or in the air, whoever has ever attained wisdom, glory, salvation, material prosperity or welfare anywhere and by any means whatsoever, know it to be the result of association with holy men. There is no other means either in the world or in the Vedas. Wisdom draws not without association with saints, and such association cannot be easily had without the grace of Shri Ramji. Contact with noble souls is the root of joy and blessings. It constitutes the very fruit and fulfillment of all endeavors, whereas all other practices are blossoms, as it were. Through contact with virtuous, even the wicked get reformed, just as a base metal is transmuted by the touch of the philosopher's stone. On the other hand, if by mischance good men fall into evil company, they maintain their noble character like the gem on the hood of a serpent. Even the speech of deities like Brahmaji, Vishnuji and Shivji, poets and men of wisdom, feighters in depicting the glory of pious souls. Much less can it be described by me, even as a dealer in vegetables finds himself incapable of expatiating on the qualities of gems. I bow to the saints who are even-minded towards all and have no friend or foe, just as a flower of good quality placed in the palm of one's hands communicates its fragrance alike to both the hands, the one which plucked it and that which held and preserved it. Realizing thus the noble disposition and loving nature of saints who are innocent at heart and Catholic in spirit, I make this humble submission to them, listening to my childlike prayer and taking compassion on me. O noble souls, bless me with devotion to the feet of Shri Ramji. Again, I greet with a sincere heart the malevolent class who are hostile without purpose even to the friendly, to whom others' loss is their own gain, and who delight in others' desolation and wail over their prosperity. They try to eclipse the glory of Vishnuji and Shivji, even as the demon Rahu intercepts the light of the full moon during what is known as the lunar eclipse. and they are valiant like the reputed king Sahasrabhu, so called because of his possessing 1,000 arms in working others' woe. They detect others' faults as if with 1,000 eyes, and their designing mind mars others' interests, even as a fly spoils clarified butter. In splendor, they emulate the god of fire, and in anger, they vie with the god of death, who rides a buffalo. They are rich in crime and wise as Kubera, the god of riches, he is in gold. Like the rise of a comet, their advancement augurs ill for others' interests. Like the slumber of Kumbhakarna, their decline alone is propitious for the world. They lay down their very life in order to be able to harm others, even as hailstones dissolve after destroying the crop. I reverence a wicked soul as the fiery, 1,000-tongued serpent god Seisha, in so far as he eagerly expatiates on others' faults with 1,000 tongues as it were. Again, I bow to him as the celebrated King Prithu, who prayed for 10,000 years in order to be able to hear the glories of the Lord to his heart's content. Inasmuch as he hears of others' faults with the 1,000 years as it were, once more do I supplicate to him as Indraji, the Lord of Celestials, in so far as wine appears charming and beneficial to him, even as the army of gods is beneficent to Indraji. Harsh language is dear to him, even as the thunderbolt is fondly cherished by Indraji, and he detects others' faults with 1,000 eyes as it were. The wicked burn with jealousy as they hear of others' welfare, be they his friends, foes, or neutrals. Such is their wont. Knowing thus, this humble soul makes loving entreaties to them with joined palms. I, for my part, have made entreaties to them. They too must not fail to do their part. However fondly you may nurture a brood of crows, can you ever expect ravens to turn vegetarians? I adore the feet of a saint and a wicked soul, both of whom give pain, though some difference is said to exist between them, whereas the former class cause mortal pain while parting, the latter give agonizing torment during their meeting. Though born together in the world, they differ in their traits, even as the lotus and the leech, both of which spring from water. The good and the wicked resemble nectar and wine respectively. The unfathomable ocean in the form of this world is their common parent. The good and the wicked gather a rich harvest of good reputation and infamy by their respective doings. Although the merits of nectar, the moon, the seat of nectar, the Ganga, the river of the celestials, and a pious soul on the one hand, and the demerits of venom, fire, the unholy river Karmanash, which is said to be full of the impurities of the Kali Yuga, and the hunter on the other, are known to all. Only that which is to man's taste appears good to him. Of course, a good man has bias for goodness alone, while a vile person is prone to vileness. While nectar is praised for its immortalizing virtue, poison is extolled for its deadly effects. The tales of sins and vices of the wicked on the one hand, and of the virtues of the virtuous on the other, are like boundless and unfathomable oceans. That is why I have enumerated only a few virtues and vices, for they cannot be acquired or discarded without being duly distinguished. The good as well as the vile, all have been brought into being by the Creator. It is the Vedas that have differentiated them by reckoning the merits of the former class and the demerits of the other. The Vedas, the Itihas, such as the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, and the Puranas unanimously declare that the creation of Brahmaji, the Creator, is an intermixture of good and evil. It is characterized by pairs of opposites such as pain and pleasure, sin and merit, day and night, the good and the wicked, good birth and vile birth, demons and gods, the high and the low, nectar and poison are happy life and death, Maya and Brahmaji. That is, matter and spirit, the soul and God, the Lord of the universe, plenty and poverty, the pauper and the king, the sacred Kashi or Varanasi and Magadha of North Bihar, the holy Ganga, the river of the celestials, and the unholy Karmanash in Bihar, the desert land of Marwad and the rich soil of Malwa, the Brahmana who is veritable God on earth, and the barbarian who feeds on the cow, heaven and hell, attachment and dispassion. The Vedas and other sacred books have sifted good from evil. God has created the universe consisting of animate and inanimate beings as partaking of both good and evil. Swans in the form of saints imbibe the milk of goodness, rejecting water in the form of evil. When Providence blesses one with such discrimination as is possessed by the swan, then alone does the mind abandon evil and gets enamored of goodness. By force of the spirit of the times, old habits and past karma, even the good deviate from the goodness under the influence of Maya. But just as servants of Sri Hariji rectify that error and eradicating sorrow and weakness bring untarnished glory to them, even so the wicked occasionally perform a noble deed due to their good association. Although their evil nature, which is unchangeable, cannot be obliterated, even those who are impostors are respected on account of their garb, as the world is taken in by their attractive appearance. But they are eventually exposed and cannot keep up their false appearance till the end, as was the case with Kalnemi, Ravan and Rahu. The good are the honored notwithstanding their mean appearance, even as Jambavant, a general of Sugriva's army, who was endowed with the form of a bear and possessed miraculous strength, and Hanumanji, the monkey god, won honor in this world. Bad association is harmful, while good company is an asset in itself. This is true in the world as well as in the eyes of the Vedas, and is known to all. Through contact with the wind, dust ascends to the sky, while it is assimilated with the mud when united with the low-lying waters. Parrots and mynas, nurtured in the house of the virtuous, and the wicked repeat the name of Ramji and pour a volley of abuses respectively. Smoke coming in contact with an evil, earthy substance turns into soot. The same is used as a material for copying the Puranas with when converted into beautiful ink. Again, in conjunction with water, fire and air, it is transformed into a cloud and brings life to the world. The planets, medicines, water, air, clothes prove good or bad in the world according to their good or evil associations. Only men endowed with a keen insight are able to know this. The proposition of moonlight and darkness is the same in the bright as well as in the dark fortnight. Only the two have been named differently by the Creator, knowing the one as the nourisher and the other as the emaciator of the moon. The world has given it a good name and a bad one. Whatever begins animate or inanimate, there are in the universe, recognizing them, one and all, as consisting of Shri Ramji. I ever adore the lotus feet of all with joined palms. I reverence gods, demons, human beings, nagas, birds, spirits, mains, the soul of departed ancestors, and Gandharvas, Kinnaras, and Rakshasas. Pray be gracious to me all on this occasion. 8,400,000 species of living beings, classified under 4 broad divisions, inhabit land, water, and the air. Recognizing the entire creation as full of Sitaji and Ramji, I make obeisance to them with joined palms. Knowing me as your servant, be genuinely gracious to me, all of you, O minds of compassion. I have no confidence in my intellectual power, hence I supplicate to you all. I would recount the virtues of the Lord of Raghus, Sri Ramji, but my wits are poor. whereas the exploits of Shri Ramji are unfathomable. For this I find not the least resources. While I am bankrupt of mind and intellect, my ambition is right royal. Even though my intellect is exceedingly mean, my aspiration is pitched too high. While I crave for nectar, I have no means in this world to procure even buttermilk. The virtues will forgive my presumption and listen to my childish babbling with interest. When a child prattles in lisping accents, the parents hear it with a mind full of delight. Those, however, who are hard-hearted, mischievous, and perverse and cherish others' faults as an ornament will feel amused. Who does not like one's own poetry, be it delightful or exceedingly insipid? Such good people as delight to hear others' compassion are rare in this world. The world abounds in men who resemble lakes and rivers that get swollen with their own rise when waters are added to them. There is some rare good soul like the ocean which swells at the sight of the full moon. The laughter of the evil-minded will benefit me. Crows call the cuckoo horse, herons ridicule the swan, frogs make fun of the kataka bird, and malicious rogues deride refined speech. To those who have no taste for poetry nor devolution to the feet of Shri Ramji, this undertaking of mine will serve as a subject for delightful mirth. My composition is couched in the popular dialect and my intellect is feeble. Hence it is a fit subject for ridicule, and those who laugh shall not incur any blame. To those who cherish no love for the feet of the Lord and have no sound reason either, this story will sound unattractive to their ears. To those, however, who possess devotion to the feet of God Vishnuji and Shivji, and those mind is not perverse, the tale of the chief of the Raghus will taste as sweet. Knowing it in their heart as adorned with devotion to Shri Ramji, the virtuous will listen to it with bland words and praise. I am no poet, nor an adept in the art of speech, and am a cipher in all arts and sciences. There are elegant devices of letters, subtleties of meaning, various figures of speech, metrical compositions of different kinds, infinite varieties of emotions and sentiments, and multifarious flaws and excellences of poetic composition. Of these details of poetry, I possess critical knowledge of none. I vouch for it in writing on the blank sheet. My composition is devoid of all charm. It has only one merit, which is known throughout the world. Recognizing this merit, men of sound reason who are gifted with unbiased judgment will surely hear it. It contains the gracious name of the Lord of Raghus, which is exceedingly holy and the very cream of the Puranas and the Vedas. It is the abode of blessings and the remover of evils, and is muttered by Lord Shivji, the enemy of the demon Tripura, along with his consort Umaji. Even a composition of marvelous beauty and written by a gifted poet does not commend itself without the name of Shri Ramji. A pretty woman with a charming countenance and fully adorned does not look attractive when undressed. On the other hand, the wise recite and hear with admiration even the composition of a worthless poet, which is devoid of all merit, knowing it as adorned with the name and glory of Shri Ramji. For, like the bee, saints have a bias for goodness. Although it has no poetic charm whatsoever, the glory of Shri Ramji is manifest in it. This is the only hope which flashes on my mind, who has not been exalted by noble company. Even smoke rising from burning aloe wood is impregnated with the latter's fragrance and gives up its natural pungency. Although my composition is clumsy, it treats of a commendable theme, that is, the story of Ramji, which brings felicity to the world. The tale of the Lord of Raghus, O Tulsidas ji, brings forth blessings and wipes away the impurities of the Kali Yuga. The course of this stream of my poetry is tortuous like that of the holy Ganga. By its association with the auspicious glory of the Lord, my composition will be blessed and will captivate the mind of the virtuous. On the person of Lord Shivji, even the ashes of the cremation ground appear charming and purity by their very thought. My composition will appear extremely delightful to all by its association with the glory of Sri Ramji. Even as timber of every description is transformed into sandal and becomes worthy of adoration by contact with the Malai mountain. And nobody takes into account the quality of wood in that region. The milk, even of a dark cow, is white and possesses a great medicinal value and is drunk by all. So do the wise chant and hear the glory of Sitaji and Ramji, even though couched in the language of common people. The beauty of a gem, a ruby, and a pearl does not catch the eye as it should, so long as they are borne on the head of a serpent, the top of a mountain, and a crown of an elephant respectively. The charm of them all is enhanced when they adorn the diadem of a king or a person of a young lady. Even so, the wise say, the outpourings of a good poet originate at one place, in the poet's own mind, and exercise their charm elsewhere on the mind of the admirer. Attracted by the devotion, Saraswati ji, the goddess of poetry, comes with all speed from the abode of Brahmaji, the topmost heaven, at his very invocation. The fatigue occasioned by this long journey cannot be relieved by millions of devices unless she takes a dip in the lake of Sri Ramji's exploits. Realizing this in their heart, poets and wise men chant the glory of Sri Hariji alone, which wipes away the impurities of Kali Yuga. Finding the bard singing the glories of worldly men, the goddess of speech begins to beat her brow and repent. The wise liken the heart of a poet to the sea, his intellect to the shell containing pearls, and goddess Saraswati ji to the star called Swati ji. If there is a shower in the form of beautiful ideas, lovely pearls make their appearance in the form of poetic effusions. If those pearls are pierced with skill and strung together on the beautiful thread of Sri Rama's exploits, and if noble souls wear them in their innocent heart, grace in the form of excessive fondness is the result. Those who are born in this terrible age of Kali, who thought akin to the crow in their doings, have put on their garb of swan, who tread the evil path, abandoning the track of the Vedas, who are embodiments of falsehood and repositories of sins of the Kali Yuga, who are impostors claiming to be devotees of Sri Ram, though slaves of mammon, anger and passion, and who are unscrupulous, hypocritical, and foremost among intriguers. I occupy the first place among them. Were I to recount all my vices, their tale will assume large dimensions, and yet I shall not be able to exhaust them. Hence, I have mentioned very few. A word should suffice for the wise. Entering into the spirit of my manifold prayers, none should blame me on hearing this story. Those who will raise objections, even then, are more stupid and deficient in intellect than myself. I am no poet and have no pretensions to ingenuity. I sing the glories of Sri Ram according to my own lights. My intellect, which wallows in the world, is a poor match for the unlimited exploits of the Lord of Raghus. Tell me, of what account is cotton in the face of the strong wind, before which even mountains like Meru are blown away? Realizing the infinite glory of Sri Ram, my mind feels very diffident in proceeding with this story. Goddess Saraswati, Seisha, the thousand-headed serpent god, the great Lord Shiva, Brahma, the Creator, the Agams, the Vedas, and the Puranas unceasingly sing his virtues, saying, "Not that, not that." Though all know the Lord's greatness as such, yet none has refrained from describing it. The Vedas have justified it thus. They have variously sung the glory of remembering the Lord, God, who is one, desireless, formless, nameless, and unborn, who is truth, consciousness, and bliss, who is supreme effulgence, all-pervading and all-formed. It is He who has performed many deeds, assuming a suitable form, that He has done only for the good of His devotees, for He is supremely gracious and loving to the suppliant. He is excessively fond of His devotees and treats them as His own. He has never frowned at him to whom He has once shown His favor, the restorer of what has been lost, the befriender of the poor, the Lord of Raghus. He is a straightforward and powerful master. Knowing thus, the wise sing the glory of Sri Hari, and thereby hallow and bring supreme reward to their speech. It is on this strength, the supreme efficacy of remembering the Lord and the potency of His grace, that I shall sing the virtues of the Lord of Raghus, bowing my head to the feet of Sri Ram. Sages have sung the glory of Sri Hari in the past. It will be easy for me to follow that very path. If kings get bridges constructed over big rivers which are too broad, even the tiniest ants cross them without exertion. Reassuring the mind in this way, I shall narrate the charming story of the Lord of Raghus, Vyas, and various other top-ranking poets who have reverently recounted the blessed glory of Sri Hari. I bow to the lotus feet of them all. Let them fulfill all my desires. I make obeisance to the bards of the Kali Yuga who have sung the multitudinous virtues of the Lord of Raghus. Even those poets of supreme wisdom who belong to the Prakriti or popular class, as opposed to the Samskriti or the cultured class, who have narrated the exploits of Sri Hari in the spoken language, including those who have flourished in the past, those who are still living, and those who are yet to come. I reverence them, one and all, renouncing all false appearance. Be propitious and grant this boon, that my song may be honored in the assemblage of pious souls. A composition which the wise refuse to honor is fruitless labor which only silly poets undertake. Of glory, poetry, and affluence that alone is blessed, which, like the celestial river Ganga, is conducive to the good of all. The glory of Sri Ram is charming indeed, while my speech is rough. This is something incongruous, I am afraid. By your grace, even this incongruity will turn out well for me. Embroidery of silk looks charming even on coarse cloth. The wise admire only that poetry which is lucid and portrays a spotless character, and which even opponents hear with applause, forgetting natural animosity. Such poetry is not possible without a refined intellect, and of intellectual power I have very little. Be gracious, therefore, so that I may depict the glory of Sri Hari. I solicit again and again, poets and wise men, lovely swans, sporting in the Mansarovar lake of Sri Ram's exploits, hearing my childlike prayer and recognizing my refined taste, be kindly disposed towards me. I bow to the lotus feet of the sage Valmiki, who composed the Ramayana, which, though containing an account of the demon Khar, a cousin of Ravan, is yet very soft and charming, and though faultless, is yet full of reference to Dushan, a cousin of the demon king Ravan. I reverence all the four Vedas, barks, as it were, on the ocean of mundane existence, which never dream of weariness in singing the untarnished glory of Sri Ram, the chief of Raghus. I greet the dust on the feet of Brahma, the Creator, who has evolved the ocean of worldly existence, the birthplace of nectar, the moon, and the cow of plenty in the form of saints on the one hand, and of poison and wine in the form of the wicked on the other, making obeisance to the feet of gods, the Brahmanas, wise men, and the deities presiding over the 9 planets. I pray to them with joined palms. Be pleased to accomplish all my fair desires. Again, I bow to Goddess Saraswati and the celestial river Ganga, both of whom are holy and perform agreeable roles. The one, Ganga, wipes away sin through immersion and drought. The other, Saraswati, dispels ignorance through the recital and hearing of her glory. I adore the great Lord Shiva and his consort, Goddess Parvati, my preceptors and parents, friends of the forlorn, and even given to charity, servants, masters, and friends of Sita's Lord, and true benefactors of tulsidas in every way. Seeing the prevalence of Kali Yuga, Hara and Girija, that is, Shiva and Parvati, evolved a string of spells in the tongue of savages, incoherent syllables which yield no interpretation and require no repetition, but whose efficacy is patent, revealing Shiva's glory. That Lord of Uma, that is Parvati, favorable as he is to me, shall make this story of mine a source of blessings and joy. Thus invoking Lord Shiva and his consort Parvati and obtaining their favor, I relate the exploits of Sri Ram with heart full of ardor. By Shiva's grace my composition will shed its luster, even as a night shines in conjunction with the moon and the stars. Those who will fondly and intelligently recite or hear this story with attention will develop devotion to the feet of Sri Ram, and purged of the impurities of Kali Yuga will obtain choice blessings. I reverence exceedingly holy city of Ayodhya, Sri Ram's birthplace, and the river Sarayu flowing beside it, which wipes out the sins of the Kali Yuga. Again, I bow to the men and women of the city who enjoy the affection of the Lord in no small degree, even though they were damned as a result of the heap of sins incurred by the culminators of Sita, who were instrumental in bringing about her lifelong exile. They were lodged in a heavenly abode, having been divested of sorrow. I greet Kausalya, the eldest queen of King Dasharatha, whose glory stands diffused throughout the world. She is the esteemed horizon whence arose the lovely moon in the shape of the Lord of Raghus, who affords delight to the entire universe and is blighting as frost to lotuses in the form of the wicked. Recognizing King Dasharatha, together with all his consorts, as incarnations of merit and fair blessings, I make obeisance to them in thought, word, and deed. Knowing me as a servant of your son, be gracious to me. The father and mother of Sri Ram are the very perfection of glory, by creating whom even Brahmaji, the creator, has exalted himself. I adore the king of Ayodhya, who cherished such a true love for the feet of Sri Ram that he gave up his dear life as a mere straw the moment the Lord, who is compassionate to the poor, parted from him. I make obeisance to King Janakji along with his family, who bore hidden affection for the feet of Sri Ram, even though he had veiled it under the cloak of asceticism and luxury. It broke out the moment he saw Sri Ram. Of Sri Rama's brothers, I bow, first of all, to the feet of Bharata, whose self-discipline and religious austerity beggar description, and whose mind thirsts for the lotus feet of Sri Ram like a bee and never leaves their side. I reverence the lotus feet of Lakshmana, cool and charming and a source of delight to the devotee, whose renown served as a staff for the spotless flag of Sri Rama's glory. He is no other than the thousand-headed serpent god Seisha, the cause, support of the universe, who came down to dispel the fear of the earth. May that son of Sumitra, an ocean of benevolence and mine of virtues, be ever propitious to me. I adore the lotus feet of Shatrughna, the slayer of his foes, who is valiant yet amiable in disposition, and a constant companion of Bharata. I supplicate Hanumanji, the great hero, whose glory has been extolled by Sri Rama himself. I greet Hanumanji, the son of the wind god, an embodiment of wisdom, who is fire, as it were, for the forest of the wicked, and in the abode of whose heart resides Sri Rama, equipped with the bow and arrows. The lord of monkeys, Sugriv, the chief of bears, Jambavant, the king of demons, Vibhishana, and the host of monkeys beginning with Angada. I reverence charming feet of all who attained Sri Rama, even though born in the lowest species. As many worshippers there are of the feet of Raghupatiji, the Lord of Raghus, including birds, bees, gods, human beings, and demons. I adore the lotus feet of them all, who are disinterested servants of Sri Rama. Suka, Sankadi, and others, sage Narada, and all other eminent sages who are devotees of God and proficient in the spiritual lore. I make obeisance to all, placing my head on the ground. Be gracious to me, O lords of ascetics, knowing me as your servant. Janki ji, daughter of Janak and mother of the universe, and the most beloved consort of Shri Rama, the fountain of mercy, I seek to propitiate the pair of her lotus feet, so that by her grace I may be blessed with a refined intellect. Again, I adore in thought, word and deed the lotus feet of the all-worthy Lord of Raghus, who has lotus-like eyes and wields a bow and arrows, and who relieves the distress of his devotees and affords delight to them. I reverence the feet of Sita ji and Ramji, who, though stated to be different and yet identical, just like a word and its meaning, or like water and the waves of its surface, and to whom the afflicted are most dear. I greet the name of Shri Ram, of the chief of Raghus, which is composed of seed letters representing the fire god, the sun god, and the moon god. It is the same as Brahmaji, the creative aspect of God, Vishnuji, his preservative aspect, and Shivji, his disintegrating aspect, and the vital breath of the Vedas. It is attributeless, fearless, and a mine of virtues. It is the great spell which Lord Maheshwara mutters, and which, when imparted by him at Kashi, the modern Varanasi, leads to emancipation. Its glory is known to Lord Ganesha, who is worshipped before all others as a concession to the name. The oldest poet, Valmiki, is acquainted with the glory of the name inasmuch as he attained purity by repeating it in the reverse orders. Hearing the verdict of Lord Shivji that the name is as good as 1,000 other names of God, Goddess Bhavani ji, meaning Parvati ji, dined with her consort after uttering it only once. Noticing such partiality of her heart for the name Hara, Lord Shivji made that lady, who was the ornament of her sex, the ornament of his own person, made her a part of his own being by assigning to her the left half of his body. Shivji knows full well the power of the name, due to which deadly poison served the purpose of nectar to him. Devotion to the Lord of Raghus is, as it were, the rainy season, and the noble devotees, says Tulsidas ji, represent the paddy crop, while the two charming syllables of the name Ramji stand for the 2 months of Shravana and Bhadrapada, corresponding roughly to July and August. Both the letter sounds are sweet and attractive. They are the two eyes, as it were, of the alphabet and the very life of the devotee, easy to remember and delightful to one and all. They bring gain here and provide sustenance hereafter. They are the most delightful to utter, hear and remember, and are dear as Ramji and Lakshmanji to Tulsidas ji. When treated separately, the two letters lose their harmony, are differently pronounced, bear diverse meaning in the form of seed letters, and as such yield different results. Whereas they are naturally allied, even as Brahmaji, the cosmic spirit, and Jiva, the individual soul, good brothers like the divine sages Nara and Narayana. They are sustainers of the universe and redeemers of the devotee in particular. They are beautiful ornaments for the ears of the fair damsel in the form of bhakti, devotion, and stand as the spotless sun and moon for the good of the world. They are like the taste and the gratifying quality of nectar in the form of emancipation, and are supporters of the globe like the divine tortoise and the serpent god Seisha. Again, they are like bees for the beautiful lotus in the shape of the devotee's mind, and are the very like of Sri Krishna and Haldar for Yashoda, their foster mother, the wife of Nand, in the shape of the tongue. Lo, the two letters forming part of the name of Raghuvara, the chief of the Raghu, crown all the letters of the alphabet, the one spreading like an umbrella and the other resting as a crest jewel, O Tulsidas ji. The name and the object named, though similar in significance, are allied as a master and servant one to the other. That is to say, even though there is complete identity between God and His name, the former closely follows the latter, even as a servant follows his master. The Lord appears in person at the very mention of His name. Name and form are the two attributes of God. Both of them are ineffable and beginningless, and can be rightly understood only by means of good intelligence. It is presumptuous on one's part to declare as to which is superior or inferior. Hearing the distinctive merits of both, pious souls will judge for themselves. Forms are found to be subordinate to the name. Without the name, you cannot come to the knowledge of a form. Typical forms cannot be identified, even if they be in your hand without knowing their name. And if the name is remembered, even without seeing the form, the latter flashes on the mind with a special liking for it. The mystery of the name and the form is a tale which cannot be told. Though delightful to comprehend, it cannot be described in words. Between the unqualified absolute and qualified divinity, the name is a good intermediary. It is a clever interpreter, revealing the truth of both. Install the luminous gem in the shape of the divine name Ramji on the threshold of the tongue, at the doorway of your mouth. If you will have light both inside and outside, O Tulsidas ji. Yogis who are full of dispassion and are wholly detached from God's creation keep awake in the daylight of wisdom, muttering the name with their tongue, and enjoy the felicity of Brahmaji, the Absolute, which is incomparable, unspeakable, unmixed with sorrow, and devoid of name and form. Even those seekers of truth who aspire to know the mysterious ways of providence are able to comprehend them by muttering the name. Strivers, hankering after the worldly achievements, repeat the name. Absorbed in contemplation and become accomplished, acquiring superhuman powers such as that of becoming infinitely small in size. If devotees in distress mutter the name, their worst calamities of the gravest type disappear and they become happy. In this world, there are 4 kinds of devotees of Shri Ramji. All the 4 of them are virtuous, sinless, and noble. All the 4, clever as they are, rely upon the name. Of these, enlightened devotee is specially dear to the Lord. The glory of the name is supreme in all the 4 yugas and all the 4 Vedas, particularly so in the Kali Yuga, in which there is no other means of salvation. Even those who are free from all desires and absorbed in the joy of devotion to Shri Ramji have thrown their heart as fish into the nectarine lake of supreme affection for the name. There are two aspects of God, the one unqualified and the other qualified. Both these aspects are unspeakable, unfathomable, without beginning and without parallel. To my mind, greater than both is the name that has established its rule over both by its might. Friends should not take this as a bold assertion on the part of this servant. I record my mind's own conviction, partiality and liking. The two aspects of Brahmaji should be recognized as akin to fire. The one, which is absolute, represents fire which is latent in wood, while the other, which is qualified divinity, corresponds to that which is externally visible. Though both are inaccessible by themselves, they are easily attainable through the name. Therefore, I have called the name greater than Brahmaji and Sri Ramji both. Brahmaji is one all-pervading and imperishable. He is all truth, consciousness, and a compact mass of joy. Even though such immutable Lord is present in every heart, all beings in this world are nonetheless miserable and unhappy through the practice of the name preceded by its true appraisement. However, the same Brahmaji reveals itself even as the value of jewel is revealed by its correct knowledge. The glory of the name is thus infinitely greater than that of the Absolute. I shall show below how, in my judgment, the name is superior even to Shri Ramji. For the sake of his devotees, Shri Ramji assumed the form of a human being and, suffering calamities himself, brought relief to the pious. By fondly repeating his name, on the other hand, devotees easily become abodes of joy and blessings. Shri Ramji himself redeemed a single woman, Ahilya, the wife of an ascetic, while his name corrected the error of crores of wicked souls. For the sake of the sage Vishwamitra, Shri Ramji wrought the destruction of Suketu's daughter Tadaka with her army and son Subahu, while his name puts an end to the devotee's vain hopes along with his errors and sorrows, even as the sun terminates night. In his own person, Shri Ramji broke the bow of Shivji, while the very glory of his name dispels the fear of rebirth. The Lord restored the charm of the Dandaka forest alone, while his name purifies the mind of countless devotees. The delighter of Raghus, Shri Ramji, crushed only a host of demons, while his name uproots all the impurities of Kali Yuga. The Lord of Raghus conferred immortality only on faithful servants like Shabari, the celebrated Bhila woman, and the vulture Jatayu, while his name has delivered innumerable wretches. The tale of its virtues is well known in the Vedas. As is well known to all, Shri Ramji extended his protection to two devotees only, that is, Sugriv and Vibhishana. His name, on the other hand, has showered its grace on numerous humble souls. This superb glory of the name shines forth in the world as well as in the Vedas. Shri Ramji collected an army of bears and monkeys, and took no little pains over the construction of a bridge to connect the mainland with the island of Lanka. Though the repetition of his name, however, the ocean of mundane existence itself gets dried up. Let the wise bear this in mind. Shri Ramji killed in battle Ravan with all his family and returned to his own city with Sitaji. He has then crowned king in the capital of Ayodhya, while gods and sages sung his glories in choicest phrases. His servants are, however, able to conquer the formidable army of error by fondly remembering his name and, absorbed in devotion, move about in joy which is peculiarly their own. By the grace of the name they know not sorrow even in dream. The name is thus greater than Brahmaji and Shri Ramji both, and confers blessings even on the bestowers of boons. Knowing this in his heart, the great Lord Shiva chose this word Rama for himself out of Shri Ramji's story, comprising 100 crore verses. By the grace of the name alone, Lord Shambhu is immortal, and though endowed with inauspicious paraphernalia such as wreath of skulls, is yet a storehouse of blessings. Again, it is by the grace of the name alone that siddhas, sages and yogis like Sukha, Sanaka and others enjoy divine raptures. Naradji realized the glory of the name. That is why, while Sri Hari is beloved of the world and Hara is dear to Sri Hari, he, Naradji, is dear to Hari, Hara, Vishnuji and Shivji both. It was because of his repeating the name that the Lord showered his grace on Prahlad, who thereby became the crest jewel of devotees. Dhruva repeated the name of Sri Hari with a feeling of indignation at the harsh treatment received from his stepmother, and thereby attained a fixed and incomparable station in the heavens. It is by remembering the holy name that Hanumanji, son of the wind god, holds Sri Ramji under his thumb. The vile Ajamil and even the celebrated elephant and the harlot of the legend were liberated by the power of Sri Hari's name. I have no words to depict the glory of the name. Not even Ramji can adequately glorify it. The name of Ramji is a wish-yielding tree, the very home of beatitude in this Kali Yuga, by remembering which Tulsidas ji, the poet himself, was transformed from an intoxicating drug like the hemp plant into the holy basil. Not only in this Kali Yuga, but in all the 4 ages, at all times, past, present and future, and in all the 3 spheres, that is, heaven, earth and the subterranean region, creatures have been rid of grief by repeating the name. The verdict of the Vedas and the Puranas, as well as the saints, is just this, that love of Ramji or the name of Ramji is the reward of all virtuous acts. In the first stage, contemplation. In the second age, sacrifice. In Dwapar Yuga, the Lord is propitiated through worship. This Kali Yuga, however, is simply corrupt and the root of all impurities, where the mind of man wallows like a fish in the ocean of sin. In this terrible age, the name alone is the wish-yielding tree, the very thought of which puts an end to all the illusions of the world. The name of Ramji is the bestower of one's desired object in this Kali Yuga. It is beneficent in the other world and one's father and mother in this world. In Kali Yuga, neither karma nor bhakti nor again Gyan avails. The name of Ramji is the only resort. The Kali Yuga is, as it were, the demon Kalnemi, the repository of all wiles, whereas the name is the wise and mighty Hanumanji. To use another metaphor, the name of Ramji is, as it were, the Lord manifested as a man-lion, and the Kali Yuga, the demon Hiranyakashipu. Crushing this enemy of gods, the name will protect devotees repeating it, even as the man-lion protected Prahlad. The name repeated either with good or evil intentions, in an angry mood or even while yawning, diffuses joy in all the 10 directions. Remembering that name and bowing my head to the Lord of Raghus, I proceed to recount the virtues of Sri Ramji. He whose grace is never tired of showing its goodwill to others will mend my errors in every way. Ramji is a noble lord and a poor servant like myself, yet true to his own disposition, that storehouse of compassion has fostered me. In the world as well as in the Vedas, we observe the following characteristic in a good master, that is, he comes to recognize one's devotion to him as soon as he hears one's prayer. Rich or poor, rustic or urban, learned or unlettered, of good repute or bad, a good poet or a bad one, all men and women extol the king according to his or her light, and the pious, sensible, amiable, and supremely compassionate ruler who takes his descent from a ray of God greets all with sweet words, hearing their compliments and appraising their composition, devotion, supplication, and conduct. Such is the way of earthly monarchs to say nothing of the Lord of Koshals, who is the crest jewel of wise men. Shri Ramji gets pleased with unalloyed love, but who is duller and more impure of mind in this world than I. The benevolent Ramji will nonetheless respect the devotion and pleasure of this wicked servant. Shri Ramji, who made barks out of rocks and wise counselors out of monkeys and bears, everybody calls me a servant of the Lord, and I myself claim to be one. And Shri Ramji puts up with the scoffing remark that a master like Sitaji's Lord has a servant like Tulsidas. My presumption and error are indeed very great, and hearing the tale of my sins, even hell has turned up its nose at them. I shudder to think of it due to my assumed fears, while Sri Ramji took no notice of them even in a dream. The Lord, on the other hand, applauded my devotion and spirit on hearing of, perceiving, and scanning them with the mind's eye. If there is anything good in one's heart, it is marred by the telling, for Sri Ramji is pleased to note what is there in the devotee's mind. The Lord never cherishes in his mind the lapse, if any, on part of the devotee, while he remembers the latter's spirit 100 times. For instance, the very crime of which he had killed Bali the monkey king of Kishkindha, even as a huntsman was repeated in the misdemeanor perpetrated by Sugriv. Vibhishan too was guilty of the same offense, but Shri Ramji took no cognizance of it, even in a dream. The hero of Raghu's clan, on the other hand, honored them both at his meeting with Bharata and recommended them in open court. While the Lord sat at the foot of trees, the monkeys perched themselves high on the boughs. Such insolent creatures! He exalted to his own position. There is no Lord so generous as Sri Ramji, O Tulsidas. Your goodness, O Rama, is beneficent to all. If this is in fact, Tulsidasa too will be blessed by the same, thus revealing my merits and demerits, and bowing my head once more to all, I proceed to sing the immaculate glory of the chief of Raghus, by hearing which the impurities of the Kali Yuga are wiped away. The charming story which Yajnavalkya related to the good sage Bhardwaj, I shall repeat the same dialogue at length. Let all good souls hear it with a feeling of delight. This ravishing tale was conceived by Shambhuji, who graciously communicated it to his consort Parvati ji. Shivji imparted it once more to Kakbhushan ji, a sage in the form of crow, knowing him to be a devotee of Sri Ramji and one qualified to hear it. And it was Yajnavalkya who received it from the latter and narrated it to Bhardwaj. Both these, the listener and the reciter, are equally virtuous. They view all alike and are acquainted with the pastimes of Sri Hari. Like a emblic Mirobalan fruit placed on one's palm, they hold the past, present and future with their knowledge. Besides these, other enlightened devotees of Sri Hari too recite, hear and understand this story in diverse ways. Then I heard the same story in the holy Sukarkhet, the modern Soran in the western United Provinces, from my preceptor, but as I had no sense in those days of my childhood, I could not follow it full well. Both the listener and the reciter of the mysterious story of Sri Ramji must be repositories of wisdom. How then could I, a dull and stupid creature steeped in the impurities of Kali Yuga, expect to follow it? Nevertheless, when the preceptor repeated the story time after time, I followed it to a certain extent according to my poor lights. I shall versify the same in the popular tongue so that my mind may derive satisfaction from it. Equipped with what little intellectual and critical power I possess, I shall write with a heart inspired by Sri Hari. The story I am going to tell is such as will dispel my own doubts, errors, and delusion, and will serve as a boat for crossing the stream of mundane existence. The story of Ramji is a solace to the learned and a source of delight to all men, and wipes out the impurities of Kali Yuga. Sri Ramji's story is a peahen for the serpent in the form of the Kali Yuga. Again, it is a wooden stick for kindling the sacred fire of wisdom. The tale of Ramji is the cow of plenty in this Kali Yuga. It is a beautiful life-giving herb for the virtuous. It is a veritable river of nectar on the surface of this globe. It shatters the fear of birth and death, and is virtual snake for the frog of delusion. It is beneficent to pious souls, even as goddess Parvati, the daughter of Himavan, is friendly to gods. Again, it puts an end to hell, even as Parvati ji exterminated the army of demons. It flows from the assemblage of saints, even as Lakshmi ji, the goddess of wealth, sprang from the ocean, and like the immovable earth, it bears the burden of the entire creation. Like the sacred river Yamuna, in this world it scares away the messengers of Yam, the god of death. It is holy Kashi, as it were, for the liberation of souls. It is dear to Ramji as the sacred basil plant, and is truly beneficent to Tulsidas ji as his own mother, Tulsi. It is beloved Lord Shivji as the river Narmada. It is a mine of all attainments as well as of happiness and prosperity. It is to noble qualities what Mother Aditi is to gods. It is the culmination, as it were, of devotion to and love of Sri Ram. The story of Sri Ram is the river Mandakini. A guileless heart is Mount Chitrakoot, while pure love, says Tulsidas ji, is the woodland in which Sita ji and Ram ji carry on their divine pastimes. The narrative of Ramji is a lovely wish-yielding gem and a graceful adornment for saintly wisdom. The host of virtues possessed by Shri Ramji are a blessing to the world and a bestowers of liberation, riches, religious merit, and the divine abode. They are true teachers of wisdom, dispassion, and yoga, contemplative union with God, and celestial physicians. For the fell of disease, metempsychosis, parents of devotion to Sita ji and Ramji, and the seed of all holy vows, practices, and observances, antidotes for sins, agonies, and griefs, and beloved guardians in this as well as in the next world. Valiant ministers to King, Reason, and a veritable Agastya, drinking up the immutable ocean of greed. Young lions residing in the forest of the devotee's mind to kill the herd of elephants in the shape of lust, anger, and impurities of Kali Yuga. Dear to Lord Shivji, the slayer of the demon Tripura, as a highly respectable and most beloved guest, and wish-yielding clouds quenching the wild fire of indignance. They are spells and valuable gems, as it were, for counteracting the venom of serpents in the form of sensuous enjoyments, and efface the deep marks of evil destiny contained on the forehead. They are sunbeams, as it were, dispelling the darkness of ignorance, and clouds nourishing the paddy crop in the form of devotees, trees of paradise, as it were, yielding the object of one's desire, easily available for service and gratifying like Vishnuji and Shivji, stars as it were, adorning the autumnal sky in the shape of the poet's mind, and the very life's treasure for the devotees of Sri Rama, a rich harvest of enjoyments as it were yielded by the totality of one's meritorious deeds and sincerity devoted to the good of the world, like holy men, sporting in the mind of the devotees as swans in the Mansarovar lake, and purifying as the waves of the holy Ganga. The host of virtues possessed by Sri Rama are like blazing fire to consume the dry wood of evil ways, fallacious reasoning, mischievous practices, deceit, hypocrisy, and hearsay prevailing Kali Yuga. The exploits of Sri Rama are delightful to one and all, even as the rays of the full moon. They are particularly agreeable and highly beneficial to the mind of the virtuous, who can be compared to the white water lily and the kakara bird. I shall now relate at some length the seed of the story, that is, how Goddess Bhavaniji questioned Lord Shankara and how the latter answered her questions, weaving a strange narrative round this episode. Let no one who should happen not to have heard this anecdote before be surprised to hear it. Wise men who hear this uncommon legend marvel not, for they know there is no limit to the stories of Sri Rama in this world. They are convinced in their heart that Sri Rama has bodied himself forth in diverse ways, and that Ramayana, though consisting of 1,000 million verses, is yet infinite. Great sages have diversely sung the charming stories of Sri Hari, relating as they do to different kalpas or cycles. Bearing this in mind, the reader should not entertain any doubt and should hear this narrative reverently and with devotion. Ramji is infinite. Infinite are his virtues, and the dimensions of his story are also immeasurable. Those whose thoughts are pure will, therefore, feel no surprise when they hear it. Putting away all doubts in this way and placing on my head the dust from the lotus feet of my preceptor, I supplicate all with joined palms once more, so that no blame may attach to the telling of the story. Reverently bowing my head to Lord Shivji, I now proceed to recount the fair virtues of Sri Ramji. Placing my head on the feet of Sri Hari, I commence this story in the Samvat year 1631. On Tuesday, the 9th of the lunar month of Chaitra, this story shed its luster at Ayodhya. On this day of Sri Ramji's birth, the presiding spirits of all holy places flock there. So declare the Vedas, and demons, nagas, birds, human beings, sages and gods come and pay their homage to the Lord of Raghus. Wise men celebrate the great birthday festival and sing the sweet glory of Sri Ram. Numerous groups of pious men take dip in the holy water of the Sarayu river, and visualizing in their heart the beautiful swarthy form of Sri Rama, mutter his name. The very sight and touch of the Sarayu, a dip into its waters, or a draught from it, cleanses one's sins. So declare the Vedas and Puranas. Even Sharada, the goddess of learning, with her pure intelligence, cannot describe the infinite glory of this most sacred river. The beautiful town of Ayodhya grants an abode in Sri Rama's heaven. It is celebrated through all the worlds and is the holiest of the holy. There are countless living beings in this world belonging to the four species: viviparous, oviparous, sweat-born, and those shooting from the earth. Whoever of these shed their mortal coil in Ayodhya are never born again. Knowing the town to be charming in every way, a bestower of all forms of success, and a storehouse of blessings, I commenced writing this sacred story there. The impulses of lust, arrogance, and hypocrisy positively disappear, from the mind of those who hear it. One derives solace by hearing its very name, Ram Charit Manas. The elephant of our mind, which is being scorched by the wildfire of sensuous enjoyments, is sure to get relief should it drop into this lake. The holy and beautiful Ram Charit Manas is the delight of sages. It was conceived by Lord Shiva. It puts down three kinds of error, sorrow and indignance, and uproots all evil practices and impurities of Kali Yuga. Having conceived it, the great Lord Shiv treasured it in his mind till, when a favorable opportunity presented itself, he communicated it to his consort, Parvati ji. Therefore, after due consideration, Lord Hara joyously gave it to the excellent little of Ramcharit Manas. I repeat the same delightful and charming story. Hear it reverently and attentively, O noble souls. Invoking Uma, Goddess Parvati, and Lord Shivji, I now proceed to give a full account as to what this Ramcharit Manas is like, how it came to be, and what led to its popularity in the world. By the grace of Lord Shiva, a blessed idea inspired the mind of Tulsidas, which made him the author of Ramcharitmanas. The author has polished his composition to the best of his intellect. Yet, listen to it with a sympathetic mind, O noble souls, and correct it. A refined intellect is the catchment area. Heart is the fathomless depression. The Vedas and Puranas constitute the ocean, while holy men represent the clouds which rain down pure, sweet, agreeable and blessed water in the form of Shri Ramji's excellent glory. Pastimes of a personal God that such holy men narrate in extenso are the transparency of this water, which cleanses all impurity, while loving devotion, which defies all description, represents its sweetness and coolness. This water is beneficial for the paddy crop in the form of virtuous deeds. It is life itself to the devotees of Sri Ram. The same holy water, when dropped on the soil of the intellect, flowed in volume through the beautiful channel of the ears, and collecting in the lovely spot called the heart, came to be stationary. Having remained there for a long time, I became clear, agreeable, cool, and refreshing. The four most beautiful and excellent dialogues, that is, those between Bhusundi and Garud, Shivji and Parvatiji, Yagyavalkya and Bharadwaj, and between Tulsidas ji and other saints that have been cleverly woven into this narrative are the four lovely ghats of this holy and charming lake. The 7 books are the 7 beautiful flights of steps which the soul delights to look upon with the eyes of wisdom. The unqualified, the unbounded greatness of Shri Ramji, which will be presently discussed, represents the unfathomable depth of this holy water. The glory of Shri Ramji and Sitaji constitutes the nectarian water. The similes represent the soul-ravishing sport of its wavelets. The beautiful chaupais represent the thick growth of lotus plants. The various poetic devices constitute the lovely shells that yield beautiful pearls. The other meters, that is, chands, sotas, and dohas are the cluster of charming many-colored lotuses. The incomparable sense, the beautiful ideas, and the elegant expression represent the pollen, honey, and fragrance of those flowers respectively. The virtuous acts mentioned therein are the charming swarms of bees, the references to spiritual enlightenment, dispassion, and reason represent the swan. The implications and involutions and the various excellences and styles of poetry are the lovely fishes of various kinds. The four ends of human existence, that is, worldly riches, religious merit, enjoyment, and liberation. The seasoned exposition of Gyan, knowledge of God in his absolute formless aspect, and Vigyan, knowledge of qualified divinity, both with and without form. The 9 sentiments of poetry and the references to jap, the muttering of mystic formulae, austerity, yoga, contemplative union with God, and detachment from the world. All this represent the charming aquatic creatures of this lake. Elegies on virtuous men, pious souls, and the name of God. These correspond to water birds of various kinds. The assemblages of saints referred to herein are the mango groves, hemming the lake on all sides, and piety has been likened to the vernal season. The exposition of the various types of devotion and the references to forbearance, compassion, and sense control represent the canopies of creepers. Even so, mind control, the 5 yamas or forms of self-restraint, that is, non-violence, truthfulness, non-thieving, continence, and non-acquisition of property. The 5 niyamas or religious vows, that is, those of external and internal purity, contentment, austerity, study of sacred books, or repetition of the divine name, and self-surrender to God, are the blossoms of these creepers. Spiritual enlightenment is their fruit, and loving devotion to the feet of Sri Hari constitutes the sap of this fruit of spiritual enlightenment. So declare the Vedas. The various other episodes forming part of this narrative are the birds of different colors, such as the parrot and the cuckoo. The thrill of joy that one experiences while listening to this narrative represents the flower gardens, orchards, and groves, and the delight one feels is the sporting of birds, while a noble mind is the gardener who waters the garden, etc., with the moisture of love through the charming jars of his eyes. Those who carefully recite this poem, they alone are the vigilant guardians of this lake, and those men and women who reverently hear it every day are the great gods exercising jurisdiction over this Mansarovar lake. Sensual wretches are the accursed herons and crows who never approach the lake, for here there are no varied talks of the pleasures of sense corresponding to snails, frogs, and moss. That is why poor crows and herons in the form of lustful men lack the heart to visit this place. For there is much difficulty in getting to this place, and it is not possible to reach it without the grace of Sri Ram. Bad company, which is so obdurate, constitutes a terrible rough road, and the words of such companions are so many tigers, lions, and serpents. The various occupations and entanglements of domestic life are huge mountains which are so difficult to approach. Infatuation, arrogance, and pride are so many inaccessible woods, and sophicism of various kinds are frightful streams. The Manas is most inaccessible to those who lack provisions for the journey in the shape of piety, who do not enjoy the company of saints, who have no love for the Lord of Raghus. Even if anyone makes his way to it, undergoing so much hardship, he is forthwith attacked by awe in the shape of drowsiness. Benumbing cold in the shape of stupor overtakes his heart, so that the unhappy soul is deprived of a dip even after reaching there, finding himself unable to take a plunge into the lake or to drink from it. He returns with a feeling of pride, and if anyone comes to inquire about the lake, he tries to satisfy him by vilifying it. All these obstacles do not, however, deter him whom Shri Ramji regards with overwhelming kindness. He alone reverently bathes in the lake and thus escapes the threefold agony of the fiercest kind. Those men who cherish ideal devotion to the feet of Shri Ramji never quit this lake. Let him who would bathe in this lake, brother, diligently practice satsang. Having seen the said Manas lake with the mind's eye and taken a dip into it, the poet's intellect got purged of all its dross. The heart was flooded with joy and alacrity, and a torrent of love and rapture welled from it. Thence flowed a stream of beautiful poetry carrying the water of Shri Ramji's fair renown. Sarayu is the name of this river, which is the very fountain of pure bliss. The secular viewpoint and the viewpoint of the Vedas there represent its two charming banks. This holy stream, issuing as it does from the beautiful Manas lake, uproots in its course all the impurities of the Kali Yuga, whether in the form of tiny blades of grass or of mighty trees. Having enumerated the virtues of this excellent water to the best of his intellectual capacity and bathed his mind in it, and remembering Goddess Bhavaniji and Lord Shankarji, the poet Tulsidasji narrates the beautiful story, installing in my heart the lotus feet of Lord Raghus and thus securing his grace. I now proceed to relate the charming story of the meeting of the two great sages, Yagyavalkya and Bharadwaj. The sage Bharadwaj lives in Prayag. He is extremely devoted to the feet of Sri Ram, a great ascetic and an embodiment of self-restraint, composure of mind and compassion. He is highly advanced on the spiritual path. In the month of Magha, when the sun enters the sign of Capricorn, everyone visits the chief of holy places, Prayag. Troops of gods and demons, Kinnaras, meaning demigods, and men, all devotedly bathe in the triple stream of the Ganga, Yamuna, and Saraswati. They worship the lotus feet of God Vindumadhava, the presiding deity of Prayag, and the touch of the immortal banyan tree sends a thrill into their limbs. The hermitage of Bharadwaj is a most sacred spot, exceedingly charming and attractive even to great hermits, and the haunt of sages and seers who go to bathe at the holiest of holy places. At daybreak, they all perform their ablutions with religious fervor and then converse together on the virtues of Sri Hari. They discuss the nature of Brahmaji, the Supreme Eternal, the precepts of religion, and the classification of fundamental entities, and expatiate on devotion to the Lord coupled with spiritual enlightenment and dispassion. In this way, they bathe for the whole month of Magha and then return each to his hermitage. There is a great rejoicing every year, and having performed their ablutions while the sun stays in Capricorn, the hosts of sages disperse. Having bathed on one occasion for the whole period of the sun's stay in Capricorn, when all the great sages had left for their hermitages, Bharadwaj clasped the feet and detained the supremely wise saint Yajnavalkya. He reverently washed the latter's lotus feet and installed him on a most sacred seat, and extolling his fair renown with the religious ceremony, Bharadwaj spoke in mild and reverential tones. A grave doubt haunts my mind, holy sir, and the whole mystery of the Vedas stands revealed to you. I am afraid and ashamed to utter the doubt, and I lose a great opportunity if I keep it back. The saints lay down the rule, and the Vedas as well as the Puranas and sages too loudly proclaim that pure wisdom cannot dawn in the heart should one keep anything concealed from one's spiritual preceptor. Remembering this, I disclose my folly. Dispel it, taking pity on this servant, my Lord. The saints as well as the Puranas and the Upanishads too declare that the potency of the name Ramji is unlimited. The immortal Lord Shivji, who is the fountain of joy and a storehouse of wisdom and goodness, incessantly repeats it. There are 4 broad divisions of living beings in the world. Such of them as die in the holy city of Kashi attain to the highest state. This too marks the glory of Shri Ramji's name, O chief of sages, for it is this very name that Lord Shivji mercifully imparts to the dying soul in Kashi. I ask you, my Lord, who that Ramji is? Pray explain to me, O storehouse of compassion. One such Ramji is the Prince of Ayodhya, whose exploits are known throughout the world. Infinite was his sorrow due to the loss of his wife, and flying into a rage, he slew Ravana in battle. It is this very Ramji, my Lord, or someone else, who named the slayer of the demon Tripura. Shivji ever repeats, "You are an embodiment of truth and omniscient. So ponder well and give me your considered reply. Tell me in detail, my master, the story whereby my overwhelming perplexity may be overcome." Yajnavalkya smilingly said, "The glory of the Lord of Raghus is already known to you. You are a devotee of Ramji in thought, word, and deed. I have come to know your ingenuity. you wish to hear an account of the hidden virtues of Ramji. That is why you have questioned me as if you were quite ignorant. Listen, then, with a devout attention, my child, while I narrate the beautiful story of Ramji. Appalling ignorance is the gigantic demon Mahishasura, so called because he was endowed with the form of a buffalo, while the narrative of Ramji is the dread Kalika, who made short work of the demon. The story of Ramji is like the moonbeams that are drunk in by Kakora bird in the form of saints. A similar doubt was expressed by no less a personage than Bhavani ji, meaning Goddess Parvati ji, and the great Shiv ji then expounded the matter in detail. I shall repeat now, to the best of my lights, the dialogue between Umaji, Goddess Parvati ji, and Shambhuji, Lord Shivji. Hear, O sage, the time and the occasion of this dialogue, your gloom will be lifted. Once upon a time, in the age of Treta, Lord Shivji called on the jar-born sage Agastya. His consort, Goddess Sati ji, Mother of the Universe, accompanied him. The sage worshipped him, knowing him to be the universal Lord. The great sage narrated at length the story of Ramji, and Lord Maheshaji listened to it with extreme delight. The sage then inquired about devotion to Hari, and Shambhuji discoursed on it, finding in the sage a fit recipient. Thus narrating and hearing the tale of Sri Ramji's virtues, the Lord of Kailasa, Shivji, spent some days there. Finally, asking leave of the sage, the slayer of the demon Tripura, Shankarji proceeded to his home with Daksha's daughter Sati. During those very days, with a view to relieving the burden of the earth, Sri Hari had descended in the line of King Raghu. Renouncing his right to the throne at the word of his father, Dasharatha, the immortal Lord was wandering in the Dandaka forest in the garb of an ascetic. Lord Hara, Shivji, kept pondering as he went, how can I obtain a sight of him? The Lord has bodied himself forth secretly, and if I visit him, everyone will know who he is. In Shankarji's heart, there was a great tumult. Satiji, however, had no inkling of this secret. His mind, says Tulsidas ji, apprehended lest the secret might be disclosed, while the temptation of obtaining a sight of the Lord made his eyes wistful. Ravan, the demon king of Lanka, had sought from Brahmaji the boon of death at the hands of a human foe, and the Lord would have the words of Brahmaji come true. If I do not go to meet him, I shall ever regret it. Shivji pondered, but found no solution to the puzzle. The Lord was thus lost in a reverie. Meanwhile, the vile Ravan, who had no less than 10 heads, took with him the demon Marich, who forthwith assumed the illusionary form of a deer. The fool Ravan carried off King Videha's daughter Sitaji by fraud. The Lord's real might was not known to him. Having killed the antelope, Sri Hari returned with his brother Lakshmanji and his eyes were filled with tears when he saw the empty hermitage. The Lord of Raghus felt distressed at the loss like a mortal man, and the two brothers roamed about in the woods in search of her. He who knows neither union nor separation showed unmistakable signs of grief born of separation. Exceedingly mysterious are the ways of the Lord of Raghus. The supremely wise alone can comprehend them. The dull-witted, in their height of folly, imagine something quite different. On that very occasion, Shambhuji saw Shri Ramji, and excessive joy of an extraordinary type welled up in his heart. He feasted his eyes on that ocean of beauty, but he did not disclose his identity, as he knew it was not appropriate occasion for the same. The destroyer of Cupid, Shivji, passed an exclaiming glory to the remember of the universe, who is all truth, consciousness and bliss. As Shivji went on his way with Satiji, the all-merciful Lord was repeatedly thrilled with joy. When Satiji beheld Shambhuji in this state, a grave doubt arose in her mind. Shankarji is a Lord of the universe himself and deserves universal adoration. Gods, men and sages all bow their heads to him. Yet he made obeisance to this prince, referring to him as the Supreme Being, who is all truth, consciousness and bliss. He was enraptured to behold his beauty and felt an upsurge of emotion in his heart, which he is unable to control even to this moment. The Supreme Eternal, which is all-pervading, unbegotten, without parts, free from desire, beyond Maya and beyond all distinction, and which not even the Vedas can comprehend, can it assume the shape of a man? Even Vishnuji, who takes a human form for the sake of gods, is omniscient, like the Slayer of Tripura, Shivji. Can he wander in search of his consort like an ignorant man? He who is a repository of knowledge, the Lord of Shree, the goddess of prosperity, and the slayer of demons. The words of Shambhuji too cannot be false. Everyone knows that he is all-wise. Thus her mind was filled with an interminable series of doubts. Her heart could not be pacified by any means. Although Bhavaniji did not open her lips, Lord Hara, who is the inner controller of all, came to know everything. Look here, Sati, the woman in foremost in you, you should never harbor such a doubt in your mind. He is no other than Rama, the hero of Raghu's race, my beloved deity, whose story was sung by the jar-born sage Agastya, faith in whom was the subject of the talk I gave to him, and whom illumined sages ever wait upon. He who has bodied himself forth as the jewel of Raghu's race for the sake of his devotees is no other than the Supreme Eternal, who is all-pervading and ever free, who is the ruler of all the worlds and the Lord of Maya, whom illumined sages, yogis and siddhas constantly meditate upon with their sinless mind, and whose glory is sung by the Vedas as well as the Puranas and other scriptures in negative terms as not this. Although Lord Shivji repeated this time after time, his exhortation made no impression on the heart of Sati ji. Then the great Lord Shivji smilingly said, realizing in his heart the potency of Sri Hari's Maya, if you have a grave doubt in your mind, why not go and verify the thing? I shall be waiting in the shade of this banyan tree till you come back to me. Using your critical judgment, you should resort to some device whereby the stupendous error born of your ignorance may be rectified. Thus, obtaining leave of Shivji, Sati ji proceeded on her mission. She racked her brains to find out what step she should take in order to test the divinity of Ramji. On this side, Shivji came to the conclusion that mischief was in store for Daksha's daughter Sati ji. When her doubt did not yield even to my assurances, he said to himself, it seems the stars are unpropitious to her and no good will come out of it. After all, whatever Shri Ramji has willed must come to pass. Why should one add to the complication by indulging in further speculation? So saying, Lord Shivji began to mutter the name of Sri Hari, while Sati ji proceeded to the spot where the all-blissful Lord Sri Ram was. After many an anxious thought, Sati ji assumed the form of Sita ji and moved ahead on the same route along which the ruler of men, Sri Ram, was passing. When Lakshman ji saw Umaji in her disguise, he was astonished and much puzzled. He was tongue-tied and looked very grave. The sagacious brother was acquainted with the Lord's glory, all-perceiving and the inner controller of all, the Lord of gods. Shri Ramji took no time in detecting the false appearance of Sati ji. Ramji was the same omniscient Lord whose very thought wipes out ignorance. Sati ji sought to practice deception even on him. See how deep-rooted the nature of the woman is. Extolling in his heart the potency of his Maya, delusive power, Sri Ramji smilingly accosted her in a mild tone. Joining the palms of his hands, he first made obeisance to her, mentioning his name along with his father's. He then asked her the whereabouts of Lord Shivji, who has a bull emblazoned on his standard, and wondered what made her roam about all alone in the forest. Sati ji felt very uncomfortable when she heard these soft yet significant words of Ramji. She turned towards the great Lord Shivji with a feeling of awe and much dejected at heart. I heeded not the word of Shankarji and imposed my ignorance on Ramji. What reply shall I give to my Lord now? The agony of her heart was most terrible. Shri Ramji perceived that Sati ji had got vexed. He therefore revealed to her a part of his glory. As she went on her way, Sati ji beheld a strange phenomenon. Ramji was going ahead of her along with his consort Sita ji and his younger brother Lakshman. She looked back, and there too she saw the Lord with his brother and Sita ji in an attractive garb. Whichever way she turned her eyes, there was the Lord enthroned with the Siddhas and illumined sages ministering to him. Sati ji saw more than one sets of Shivji, Brahmaji and Vishnuji, each set possessing a glory infinitely greater than that of the others. She also beheld a whole host of gods bowing at the Lord's feet and waiting upon him in their different garbs. She further perceived innumerable Satis, consorts of Shivji, consorts of Brahmaji, and Lakshmiji, consorts of Vishnuji, all peerless in beauty. They conformed in their appearance to the garb in which Brahmaji and the other gods appeared. Each separate vision of Ramji was attended by a whole host of gods with their feminine counterparts, as well as by the whole animate and inanimate creation with its multitudinous species. But while the gods who adored the Lord appeared in diverse garbs, the appearance of Shri Ramji was the same in every case. Although she saw many Ramjis with as many Sitajis, their garb did not vary. Seeing the same Ramji, the same Lakshmanji, and the same Sitaji, Satiji was struck with great awe. Her heart quivered, and she lost all consciousness of her body. Closing her eyes, she sat down on the wayside. When she opened her eyes and gazed once more, the daughter of Daksha saw nothing there. Repeatedly bowing her head at the feet of Shri Ramji, she proceeded to the spot where the Lord of Kailas was. When she came near, Lord Shivji smilingly inquired if all was well with her, and then said, "Tell me now the whole truth. How did you test Shri Ramji?" Having realized the greatness of the hero of Raghu's race, Satiji in her awe concealed the truth from Shivji. "I made no test, my lord. I made obeisance just like you. What you said cannot be untrue. I am fully convinced in my heart." Lord Shankarji then looked within contemplation and came to know all that Satiji had done. Again, he bowed his head to the delusive power of Shri Ramji that had prompted Satiji to tell a lie. What has been preordained by the will of Sri Hari must have its way. The all-wise Shambhuji thought within himself, Satiji had assumed the disguise of Sitaji. This made Shivji much disconsolate at heart. If I continue to love Satiji as heretofore, the cult of devotion will disappear, and it will indecorous on my part to do so. Satiji is too chaste to be abandoned, and it is a great sin to love her any more as a wife. The great Lord Shivji uttered not a word aloud, although there was a great agony in his heart. Then Shankarji bowed his head at the feet of the Lord, and as soon as he invoked Shri Ramji, the idea came to his mind that he should have no connection with Satiji so long as she continued to remain in that body. Shivji resolved accordingly, and having so resolved, the stable-minded Lord Shankarji proceeded towards his home, with his mind fixed on the hero of Raghu's race. Even as he stepped forward, a charming voice from the heaven thundered forth, "Glory to the great Lord Shivji, who has so staunchly upheld the cause of devotion. Who else then you can take such a vow? You are a devotee of Shri Ramji and the all-powerful Lord at the same time." Satiji felt troubled at heart when she heard the heavenly voice. She addressed Shivji in a faltering voice, "Tell me, O merciful Lord, what vow you have taken? You are an embodiment of truth and compassionate to the poor." Even though Satiji inquired in ways more than one, the slayer of the demon Tripura, Shankarji spoke not a word. Satiji concluded that the omniscient Lord had come to know everything and felt sorry that she had tried to deceive Shambhuji. The woman is silly and stupid by nature, she realized. Sati ji felt perturbed in her heart at the thought of what she had done, and the extent of her anxiety could neither be gauged nor described. She realized that Lord Shivji is a supremely unfathomable ocean of mercy. Hence, he did not openly declare her fault. From the attitude of Shankarji, however, she judged that the Lord had abandoned her and felt disturbed in her heart. Conscious of her guilt, she could not utter a word of protest, but all the while her heart smoldered like a furnace. Perceiving the sad look of Satiji, Shivji, who as a bull emblazoned on his standard, narrated the beautiful stories in order to divert her mind, relating various legends while on his way, the Lord of the universe, Shivji, reached Kailas. Then, recalling his vow, Shambhuji sat down there under a banyan tree in the yogi. Here, ye elders of the assembly and all great sages, all of you who have reviled Shankarji or heard him reviled must forthwith reap the fruit of your sin, and my father too shall fully repent. Wherever you hear a saint, Shambhuji or Vishnuji, the Lord of Lakshmiji, vilified, the rule is that if it lies within your power, you should tear out the tongue of the reviler, or you should run away closing your ears. The Slayer of Tripura, the great Lord Shivji, is the universal spirit. He is the father of the universe and is beneficent to all. It is him that my stupid father vilifies, and this body of mine has sprung from the loins of Dakshi. Therefore, installing in my heart Lord Shivji, who bears the moon on his forehead and a bull as his emblem, I shall immediately quit this body. When she spoke thus, she burnt her body with the fire of yoga. The plaintive cry rose from the whole assembly. Hearing of Sati's death, the attendants of Shambhuji began to destroy the sacrifice. Seeing the sacrifice being destroyed, the great sage Bhrigu protected it. Shankarji got all the news, and in his wrath he sent Veerbhadra. Going there, the latter made havoc of the sacrifice and requited all the gods according to their deserts. As is well known to the world, Dakshji met the same fate which an opponent of Shambhuji generally meets. The story is known throughout the world. That is why I have told it in brief. While dying, Satiji asked a boon of Sri Hari that she might remain devoted to the feet of Shivji in all successive births. That is why she was reborn as Parvati ji, the daughter of a mountain. In the house of Himachala, the deity presiding over the Himalaya mountain. Ever since Umaji was born in the house of Himalaya, the mountain became an abode of all blessings and prosperity. Sages built beautiful hermitages here and there, and Himalaya assigned them suitable abodes in the form of caves, etc. Young trees of different varieties were endowed with never-failing blossoms and fruits, and mines of jewels of various kinds appeared on the beautiful mountain. All the rivers bore holy waters, birds, bees and bees, all rejoiced. All animals gave up their natural antipathies, and all those who dwelt on the mountain loved one another. With the advent of Girija, a synonym of Parvati ji, the mountain Himalaya wore a cheerful look, even as devotion to Shri Ramji lights up the face of the devotee. Every day brought a new delight to the house of Himachal, whose glory was sung even by great gods like Brahmaji, the creator. Receiving all the news, Naradji eagerly went to the house of Himachal. The king of mountains, the presiding deity of the Himalayas, received him with great honor. Washing the sage's feet, he led him to beautiful seat. He bowed his head at the sage's feet along with his wife and had his whole mansion sprinkled with water hallowed by his feet. Himachal extolled his own good luck and summoning his daughter placed her at the sage's feet. You know everything, including the past, present and future, and have access everywhere. Therefore, O good sage, tell me what is good and what is bad about my daughter after a mature consideration. The sage smilingly replied in the following soft yet significant words. Your daughter is a mine of all virtues, pretty, amiable, and intelligent by nature. She will be called Umaji, Ambika, the mother, and Bhavaniji, adorned with all good traits. The girl shall win the unfailing love of her husband. She shall remain ever united with her Lord and bring glory to her parents. She shall command the respect of the whole universe. He who waits upon her shall lack nothing. By the mere thought of her name, women in this world shall be enabled to tread the path of fidelity to their Lord, which is sharp as the edges of a sword. Your daughter, O Himalaya, is endowed with auspicious marks. Now hear the few drawbacks she possesses. Devoid of merits, free from pride, without father or mother, unconcerned and free from doubts. An ascetic with matted hair and a heart devoid of longing, stark naked and with hideous accoutrements. Such a one shall be her lord, as I can read from the lines on her palm. Hearing the words of the sage and believing them to be true, Himalaya and his wife became disconsolate, while Umaji felt delighted. Even Naradji could not perceive this difference. Even though their outer expression was the same, their feeling was different. Girijaji and all her playmates, Himalayaji and his wife Meenaji, all had their hair standing on their end and their eyes were full of tears. The words of the celestial sage Naradji could not be untrue. Umaji cherished them in her heart. Love for the lotus feet of Shivji sprouted in her heart. She, however, felt diffident in her mind. Union with Shivji appeared so difficult to her. Finding the time inopportune for its disclosure, she concealed her emotion and then sat down in the lap of one of her playmates. The prediction of the sage could not be false. The thought made Himavan and his wife, as well as the senior playmates, anxious. Collecting himself, the Lord of Mountains said, "Tell me, holy sir, what remedy should now be employed?" The chief of sages, Naradji, replied, "Hear, O Himavan, whatever has been decreed by fate, no one can undo, not even gods, demons, human beings, nagas, or sages. Nevertheless, I tell you one remedy. This may avail if heaven helps you. Umaji will undoubtedly get such a husband as I have described to you. But whatever demerits I have shown in her bridegroom exist in Shivji, so far as I can guess. If her marriage takes place with Shankarji, everyone will call the demerits as good as virtues. Even though Sri Hari uses the serpent god Seisha as his couch and sleeps thereon, the wise do not blame him for the same. Even so, the sun and the fire absorb moisture in all forms, but no one calls them names. Again, water of every description, pure as well as impure, flows into the Ganga, yet no one calls the heavenly stream impure. Even like the sun, fire and the Ganga, the mighty incur no blame. If in their pride of wisdom foolish men emulate the great, they are cast into hell for a whole kalpa or lifetime of the universe. Can an embodied soul vie with God? Holy men would never drink wine even if they came to know that it had been made of water from Ganga. But the same wine becomes pure when it is poured into the Ganga. The difference between an individual soul and God should be similarly explained. Shambhuji is all-powerful by nature, for he is no other than God himself. Hence, matrimony with him will prove auspicious in every way. The great Lord Shivji is certainly difficult to propitiate, but he is quickly pleased when penance is undergone. If your daughter practices austerity, the slayer of the demon Tripura, Shivji, can even erase the lines of fate. Even though there may be many a suitor in the world, there is no match for her except Shivji. He is the bestower of boons, the dispeller of the agony of the suppliant, an ocean of benevolence and the delight of his devotee. Without propitiating Shivji, the object of one's desire cannot be attained through millions of yogic practices and jap. Having spoken thus, the sage returned to the abode of Brahmaji, the creator. Now hear the end of the story, how it came about. Finding her husband alone, Meena, Himalayaji's wife, said to him, "My lord, I could not follow the words of the sage. If the match, his house, and his pedigree are without parallel and worthy of our daughter, the marriage may be concluded. If not, the girl had better remain unmarried. For, my lord, Uma is dear to me as my own life. If we fail to secure a match worthy of Girija, everyone will say, Himalayaji is dull by nature. Keep this in mind, my lord, while concluding an alliance, so that there may be no cause of repentance." Having spoken these words, Meenaji laid herself prostrate with her head at the feet of her lord. The lord of the mountains, Himalayaji, replied in endearing terms, "Sooner shall the moon emit flames of fire than the prophecy of Naradji should prove untrue. Put away all the anxiety, my dear, and fix your thoughts on the Lord. He alone who has created Parvati ji will bring her happiness. Now, if you cherish any love for your child, then go and admonish her that she should practice austerity, which may bring about her union with Shivji. There is no other way of overcoming sorrow. The words of Naradji are pregnant and full of reason. Shivji, who bears a bull for his emblem, is handsome and a mine of all virtues. Recognizing this truth, do not entertain any misgiving. Shankarji is irreproachable in every way." Hearing the above words of her husband, Meenaji felt delighted at heart. She at once rose and went where Girija was. At the sight of Uma, tears rushed to her eyes, and she affectionately took the girl in her lap. Again and again she hugged the child. Her voice was choked with emotion, and she found herself tongue-tied. The mother of the universe, the all-knowing Bhavaniji, then spoke the following soft words which brought delight to her mother. "Listen, mother, I relate to you a vision which I saw. A handsome and fair-complexioned noble Brahman gave me the following exhortation. Recognizing the truth of Naradji's words, go and practice austerity. O mountain maid, the idea has commended itself to your father and mother as well. Austerity is conducive to joy and puts an end to sorrow and evils. By virtue of penance, the Creator creates the universe. By virtue of penance, Vishnuji protects the whole world. By virtue of penance, Shambhuji brings about dissolution. By virtue of penance, again, Seisha, the serpent god, bears the burden of the earth on his head. In fact, the entire creation rests on penance, Bhavani. Bearing this in mind, go and practice austerity. Hearing these words, the mother was filled with wonder. She sent for Himalayaji and communicated the vision to him. Consoling her parents in many ways, Uma set out for penance in joyous mood. Her loving household and parents felt miserable, and none could speak a word. The sage Vedshira then came and consoled them all. They were comforted when they heard of the glory of Parvati ji. Cherishing in her heart the feet of her dear Lord, Uma went to the forest and began her penance. Her delicate frame was little fit for austerities, yet she renounced all luxuries, fixing her mind on the feet of her Lord. Her devotion to the feet of her Lord presented a new face every day, and she got so absorbed in penance that she lost all consciousness of her body. For 1,000 years she lived on roots and fruits alone, while for another 100 years she subsisted on vegetables. For some days her only sustenance was water and air, while for a few days she observed rigorous fast. For 3,000 years she maintained herself on the withered leaves of the bela tree that dropped on the ground. Finally she gave up even dry leaves. Uma then came to be known by the name of Aparna, living without leaves. Seeing her body emancipated, though self-mortification, the deep voice of Brahmaji, the Creator, resounded through the heavens. Listen, O daughter of the Mountain King, your desire is accomplished. Cease all your rigorous penance. The Slayer of Tripura will soon be yours. There have been many self-possessed and illumined sages, but not one of them, Bhavani, performed such penance as this. Now cherish in your heart this supreme utterance from heaven, knowing it to be invariably true and ever sacred. When your father comes to call you, give up all resistance and return home at once. Again, when the 7 sages meet you, be assured of the veracity of this oracle. Girija, the daughter of Himavan, rejoiced to hear this utterance of Brahmaji echoed by heaven, and a thrill ran through her limbs. I have thus sung the beautiful story of Uma. Now hear the charming account of Shambhuji. Ever since Satiji went and quitted her body, Shivji's mind recoiled from everything. He ever repeated the name of the Lord of Raghus and heard the recitation of Shri Ramji's glories here and there. The embodiment of intelligence and bliss, the abode of happiness, Shivji, who is ever free from error, arrogance and desire, roamed about on earth with his heart fixed on Sri Hari, the delight of the whole world. Here he instructed the sages in wisdom, and there he extolled the virtues of Sri Ramji. Though passionless and all-wise, the Lord was smitten with the pangs of separation from his devotee Satiji. In this way, a considerable time elapsed. Devotion to the feet of Sri Ramji was ever budding in his heart. When Sri Ramji saw the self-discipline and affection of Shankarji and the indelible stamp of devotion on his heart, the merciful Lord, who fully recognizes services rendered to him and is a mine of beauty, and amiably, and an embodiment of great splendor, appeared before Shankarji and extolled him in ways more than one. Who else than you can accomplish such a vow? He said. Shri Ramji admonished him in many ways and told him of the birth of Parvati ji. The Lord in his infinite compassion narrated at full length the most pious doings of Girijaji. Now Shivji, if you have any affection for me, listen to my appeal. Go and marry Shailaja, the daughter of Himachal. Grant this boon to me. Shivji replied, although this is hardly justifiable, the words of a master cannot be set aside at the same time. My lord, your command must be respectfully carried out. This is my paramount duty. The words of one's parents, teacher and master must be unquestionably obeyed as conducive to bliss. You are my supreme benefactor in every way. Therefore, my lord, I bow to your commands. The Lord was pleased to hear the well-chosen words of Shankarji, which were inspired with devotion, wisdom and piety. The Lord said, your vow has been kept. Now bear in mind what I have told you. Saying, so he went out of sight. Shankarji questioned the impression of the vision in his heart. That very moment, the 7 sages called on Shivji. The Lord spoke to them in most charming accents. Going to Parvati ji, you put her love to the test. Then directing her father, Himalaya ji, to her, send her back to her home and dispel her doubts. There the seers saw Gauri, a name of Parvati ji, lit, fair complexioned, as if she were penance itself personified. The sages said, here, O daughter of Himachal, why are you practicing such rigorous penance? Whom do you worship? And what do you seek? Why not confide to us the real secret? I feel very shy in making my submission. You will be amused to hear of my folly. Yet my mind has taken a rigid attitude and heeds no advice. It would raise a wall on water. Relying on the truth of Naradji's prophecy, I long to fly even without wings. Look at my madness. I always covet Shivji as my husband. Hearing the above reply, the sages laughed and said, after all, your body owes its existence to a mountain, that is Himalaya. Tell us, who has listened to Naradji's advice and lived in his home? He called on and admonished the sons of Dakshji, and they never saw their home again. It was he who ruined the home of Chitraketu, and again Hiranyakashyap, the father of Prahlad, met a similar fate. Men and women who listen to Naradji's advice are sure to leave their home and become mendicants. Guileful at heart, he bears on his person the marks of a pious man. He would make everyone just like himself. Relying on these words, you crave for a husband who is apathetic by nature, devoid of attributes, shameless, homeless, and naked, who has an inauspicious look about him, wears a striking of skulls around his neck, is without a family, and has serpents for his ornaments. Tell us, what happiness do you expect by obtaining such a husband? You have fallen an easy prey to the machinization of that impostor. Shivji married Sati ji at the intercession of some friends, but later on he abandoned her and left her to die. Shivji is carefree now. He lives on alms and enjoys a sound sleep. Can women ever stay in the house of habitual recluses? Even now accept our advice. We have thought of an excellent match for you. Exceptionally good-looking, pious, agreeable and amiable, whose glory and exploits are sung by the Vedas. He is free from blemish. He is a mine of all virtues and the Lord of Lakshmiji, the goddess of prosperity, and has his abode in Vaikuntha. Such a suitor we shall unite with you. Hearing this, Bhavaniji laughed and said, "You have rightly observed that this body of mine is begotten of a rock. I would sooner die than give up my tenacity. Gold is another product of rock, which does not abandon its character even on being consigned to fire. I may not ignore Naradji's advice. Whether my house is full of desolate, I fear not. He who has no faith in the words of his preceptor cannot easily attain either happiness or success even in dream. The great God Shivji may be full of faults, and Vishnuji may be a repository of all virtues. One is, however, concerned with him alone, who gladdens one's heart. Had you met me earlier, O great sages, I would have listened to your advice with reverence. But now that I have staked my life for Shambhuji, who will weigh his merits and demerits? If you are specifically bent upon uniting a pair and cannot help negotiating a match, there is no dearth of suitors and maidens, and those who take delights in such games know no weariness. As for myself, I must wed Shambhuji or remain a virgin, no matter if I have to continue the struggle for 10 million lives. I will not disregard Naradji's admonition, even if Shambhuji himself tells me 100 times to do so. I fall at your feet, continued Parvati ji, the mother of the universe. Please return to your home. It is already late. Seeing Parvati ji's devotion, the enlightened sages exclaimed, "Glory, all glory to you, O Bhavani, Mother of the universe. You are Maya, while Shivji is God himself. You are the parents of the whole universe." Bowing their head at the feet of Parvati ji, they departed. A thrill ran through their frame again and again. The sages went and dispatched Himavan to Girija, and he, with many entreaties, brought her home. The 7 seers then called on Shivji and told him the whole history of Umaji. Shivji was enraptured to hear of her love, and the Saptarshis gladly went home. The all-wise Shambhuji then concentrated his mind and began to meditate on the Lord of Raghus. A demon, Taraka by name, flourished in those days. His strength of arm, glory and majesty were great indeed. He conquered all the spheres as well as the guardians of those spheres. All the gods were robbed of their happiness and prosperity. Knowing neither age nor death, he was invincible. The gods fought many a battle with him and lost them. They then went to Brahmaji and told him their grievances. The Creator found all the gods miserable. Brahmaji reassured them all, saying, "The demon shall die only when there is a son sprung from the loins of Shambhuji, for he alone can subdue the demon in battle. Hearing what I say, act accordingly. God will help you and the plan will succeed." Sati ji, who left her body at the sacrifice performed by Dakshji, has been born again in the house of Himachal. She had undergone a penance for winning the hand of Shambhuji, while Shivji has renounced everything and sits absorbed in contemplation. Although it is most unseemly, yet hear one proposal of mine. Approaching Cupid, the god of love, send him to Shivji and let him disturb the serenity of Shankarji's mind. Then we shall go and bow our head at Shivji's feet and prevail on him to marry even against his will. In this way alone may the interests of the gods be served. The idea is excellent, everyone said. The gods then prayed with great devotion, and the god of love, armed with 5 arrows and having a fish emblazoned on his standard, appeared on the scene. The gods told him all their distress. Hearing their tale, the god of love pondered and spoke thus with a smile. I expect good results for myself from hostility to Shambhuji. However, I shall do your work, for the Vedas say benevolence is the highest virtue. The saints ever praise him who always down his life in the service of others. So saying, the god of love bowed his head to all and departed with his associates, the bough of flowers in hand. While leaving, love thought within himself that hostility to Shivji would mean sure death to him. He then exhibited his power and brought the whole world under his sway. When the god of love, who bears a fish for his emblem, betrayed his anger, all the barriers imposed by the Vedas were swept away in a moment. The whole army of Viveka, discriminating knowledge, continence, religious vows, self-restraint of many kinds, fortitude, piety, spiritual wisdom, and the knowledge of qualified divinity, both with form and without form, morality, muttering of prayers, yoga, contemplative union with God, dispassion, and so on, fled in panic. Viveka took to flight with his associates. His great warriors turned their back on the field of battle. They all went and hid themselves in mountain caves in the form of sacred books at that time. There was commotion in the world, and everybody said, "My goodness, what is going to happen? What power will save us? Who is that superhuman being with 2 heads to conquer, whom the Lord of Rati, love, has lifted his bow and arrows in rage?" Whatever creatures existed in the world, whether animate or inanimate, and bearing masculine or feminine appellations, transgressed their natural bounds and were completely possessed by lust. The minds of all were seized with lust. The boughs of trees bent low at the sight of creepers. Rivers in spate rushed to meet the ocean. Lakes and ponds united in love with one another. Where such was reported to be the case with the inanimate creation, who can relate the doings of sentient beings? Bees that walk on land and birds traversing the air and water lost all sense of time and became victims of lust. The whole world was blinded with passion and agitated. The Chakravaka birds regarded neither day nor night. Gods, demons, human beings, kinnaras, serpents, evil spirits, fiends, ghosts, and vampires. I have refrained from dwelling on the condition of these, knowing them to be eternal slaves of passion. Even Siddhas, great sages who had no attraction for the word, and yogis gave their yoga under the influence of lust. Even great yogis and ascetics were completely possessed by lust, to say nothing of low-minded people. Those who till lately looked upon the animate and inanimate creation as full of Brahmaji, now saw it as full of the fair sex. Women perceived the whole world as full of men. while the latter beheld it as full of women. For nearly an hour, this wonderful game of love lasted in the universe. Nobody could remain self-possessed. The hearts of all were stolen by the gods of love. They alone could hold their own against him, to whom the hero of Raghu's race extended his protection. The wonder lasted for an hour or so till the god of love reached Shambhuji. Cupid trembled at the sight of Shivji. The whole world returned to itself. All living beings regained their peace of mind at once, even as the intoxicated feel relieved when their spell of drunkenness is over. The god of love was struck with terror at the sight of Bhagwan Rudra, Shivji, who is so difficult to conquer and so hard to comprehend. He felt shy, retreating, and was incapable of doing anything. Ultimately, he resolved upon death and devised a plan. He forthwith manifested the lovely spring, the king of all seasons. Rows of young trees laden with flowers appeared so charming. Woods and groves, wells and ponds, and all the quarters of heaven assumed a most delightful aspect. Everywhere nature overflowed with love, as it were. The sight aroused passion even in the dead souls. Passion was aroused even in dead souls, and the beauty of the forest beggared description. A cool, gentle, fragrant breeze fanned the fire of passion as a faithful companion. Rows of lotuses blossomed in lakes, and swarms of charming bees hummed on them. Swans, cuckoos, and parrots uttered their sweet notes, while celestial damsels sang and danced. The god of love, with his army of followers, exhausted all his numberless stratagems. Shivji's unbroken trance, however, could not be disturbed. This made Cupid angry. Seeing a beautiful bough of a mango tree, the god of love climbed up to it in a mood of frustration. He joined his 5 arrows to his bow of flowers, and casting an angry look, drove the string home to his very ears. He discharged the 5 sharp arrows, which smote the breast of Shivji. The trance was now broken, and Shambhuji awoke. The Lord's mind was much agitated. Opening his eyes, he looked all around. When he saw Cupid hiding behind the mango leaves, he flew into a rage, which made all the 3 spears tremble. Shivji then uncovered his 3rd eye. The moment he looked at the god of love, the latter was reduced to ashes. A loud wail went up through the universe. The gods were alarmed, while the demons were gratified. The thought of sense delights made the voluptuary sad, while the striving yogis were relieved of a thorn, as it were. The yogis were freed from torment, while Rati, wife of the god of love, fainted as soon as she heard of the fate of her lord. Weeping and wailing and mourning in various ways, she approached Shankarji, and making loving entreaties in divergent forms, she stood before the Lord with clasped hands. Seeing the helpless woman, the benevolent Lord Shivji, who is so easy to placate, professed as follows: Henceforth, O Rati, your husband shall be called by the name of Ananga, bodiless. He shall dominate all, even without a body. Now hear how you will meet him again. When Sri Krishna will descend in the line of Yadu to relieve the earth of its heavy burden, your Lord will be born again as his son Pradyumna. This prediction of mine can never be untrue. Hearing the words of Shankarji, Rati went away. I now proceed to relate the subsequent part of the story. When Brahmaji, the creator, and the other gods received all the tidings, they repaired to Vaikunth, the abode of God Vishnuji. Hence, all the gods, including Vishnuji and Brahmaji, went where the all-merciful Shivji was. They severely extolled and won the pleasure of the Lord, whose crest is adorned by the crescent. Shivji, who is an ocean of compassion and has a bull emblazoned on his standard, said, "Tell me, immortals, what has brought you here?" To this Brahmaji replied, "Lord, you are the inner controller of all. Even then, my master, my devotion to you urges me to make the following submission. The heart of all the immortals is seized with the dominating impulse. They long to witness your wedding with their own eyes, my Lord. O humbler of the pride of love, devise some means whereby we may be enabled to feast our eyes on this glad event. Having burned the god of love, you have done well in granting a boon to Rati, O ocean of compassion. Having meted out punishment, good masters show their grace as a matter of course. Such is their natural habit. Parvati ji has practiced penance the magnitude of which cannot be estimated. Kindly accept her now." Hearing the entreaty of Brahmaji and remembering the words of the Lord Shri Ramji, Shivji gladly said, "Amen." The gods thereupon sounded their kettle drums, and raining down flowers they exclaimed, "Victory! Victory to the Lord of Celestials!" Considering it to be an opportune moment, the 7 seers arrived on the scene. Brahmaji immediately sent them to the abode of Himavan. They approached Bhavaniji in the first instance and addressed the following sweet yet deceptive words to her. "Relying on the advice of Naradji, you would not heed our remonstrances then. Your vow has failed now, for the great Lord Shivji has burned the god of love." Hearing this, Bhavaniji smiled and said, "O great and illuminated sages, you have spoken aright. According to your belief, it is only now that Shambhuji has burned the god of love, and that till now he was smitten with love. To my mind, however, Shivji is eternally in rapport with the infinite, the unbegotten, irreproachable, passionless, and without enjoyment. Knowing him as such, if I have served him lovingly in thought, word, and deed, then here, O great sages, the gracious Lord will accomplish my vow. Your statement that Hara has burnt the god of love betrays the woeful lack of thought in you. Fire, my friends, possesses the inherent property that frost can never approach it. In case it does, it must inevitably perish. Similar is the case with the god of love and the great Lord Shivji. Hearing the words of Bhavaniji and perceiving her devotion and faith, the sages were gladdened at heart. Bowing their head to her, they went to Himavan. They related the whole episode to him, and he was much grieved to hear how Shivji had burnt love. The sages then told him of the boon granted to Rati, and Himavan was much relieved to learn this. Recalling to his mind the glory of Shambhuji, Himachal respectfully summoned great sages. He had an auspicious date, asterism, and hour ascertained, and speedily got the exact time of wedding fixed and noted down according to the Vedic precepts. Himachal handed over the note recording the exact time of the wedding to the 7 seers, and clasping their feet made entreaties to them. Calling on Brahmaji, they delivered the note to him, and as he went through it, his heart overflowed with joy. Brahmaji read the note aloud to all. The sages, as well as the whole encores of gods, was delighted to hear it. Flowers were showered from the air, music flowed from the various instruments, and auspicious jars were placed in all directions. All the gods began adorn their vehicles and aerial cars of various kinds. Happy and auspicious omens were visible, and celestial damsels sang for joy. The attendants of Shambhuji began to adorn their lord. His matted locks were formed into a crown and decked with a crest of serpents. He had serpents for his earrings and bracelets, smeared his person with ashes, and wrapped a lion skin round his loins. He bore the crescent on his charming brow and the river Ganga on the crown of his head, and had 3 eyes and a serpent for the sacred thread. His throat was black with the poison swallowed by him at the beginning of creation, and had wealth of human skulls around his neck. Thus clad in a ghastly attire, he was nonetheless an embodiment of blessings and merciful to the core. A trident and damaru adorned his hands. Shivji rode on a bull, while musical instruments played. Female divinities smiled to see him. "The world has no bride worthy of the bridegroom," they said to one another. Vishnuji, Brahmaji, and the host of other gods joined the bridegroom's procession and rode on their respective vehicles. The gathering of the immortals was incomparable in every respect. The procession, however, was hardly worthy of the bridegroom. God Vishnuji then called all the guardians of the different quarters and smilingly said, "Every one of you should march separately, each with his own retinue. The procession, brothers, is no way worthy of the bridegroom. You will make yourself a butt of ridicule in a strange city." Hearing the words of Vishnuji, the gods smiled and parted, each with his own group. The great Lord Shivji laughed in his sleeves and noticed that Sri Hari's humor never failed. As soon as he heard these most pleasing remarks of his beloved friend, he sent Bhrigu to call all his attendants. And they all came when they heard Shivji's command and bowed their head at the lotus feet of their Lord. Shivji laughed to see his host in their motley attire, riding every kind of vehicle. Some were headless, while others were hydra-headed monsters. Some were without hands and feet, while others had numerous hands and feet. Some had numerous eyes, while others had no eyes at all. Some were stout and well-built, while others had very slim bodies. Some had lean and thin bodies, while others were very stout. Some were tidy, while others had dirty habits. They had frightful ornaments, carried skulls in their hands, and were all smeared with fresh blood. They bore heads of donkeys, dogs, swine, and jackals, and the varieties of their clothes could not be counted. The troops of spirits, goblins, and fairies of various kinds beggared description. The ghosts danced and sang. They were all extremely fantastic. They looked most absurd and spoke words in a peculiar style. The procession was now quite worthy of the bridegroom. The processionists indulged in gaieties of various kinds as they went along. On the other side, Himachal erected a most wonderful pavilion which beggared description. As many mountains as existed in the world, small or big, more than man can count, and the whole host of woods, seas, rivers and ponds were all invited by Himachal. Capable of taking any form they liked, they assumed handsome figures and repaired to the house of Himalaya along with their retinues and fair consorts. They all sang festive songs out of affection. The Mountain King had already caused a number of houses to be tastefully decorated. All the guests were lodged therein, each occupying a house befitting one's status. The splendor of the city was so captivating that after a glance at it, the creative skill of Brahmaji himself looked very small. A glance at the beautiful city made the creative art of Brahmaji himself pale into insignificance. Groves and gardens, wells and ponds and rivers all looked charming beyond words. Every house was decorated with a number of triumphal arches, flags and buntings. Men and women of the city were so lovely and ingenious that they enraptured the hearts of even sages. The city in which the Mother of the Universe had bodied herself forth baffled all description. Prosperity and success, wealth and happiness were always on the increase there and presented a new aspect. When it was heard that the bridegroom's procession was close at hand, there was commotion in the city, which added to its charm. Adorning themselves and decorating their vehicles of various kinds, a party proceeded in advance to receive the procession with due honor. They were gladdened at heart to see the gathering of the immortals, and they were all the more happy to behold Shri Hari, Vishnuji. But when they started looking at Shivji's retinue, every animal they rode started back and fled in panic. The adults recovered themselves and remained where they were, while every child that came ran for its life. On their reaching home, when their parents questioned them, they spoke as follows, their limbs still shaking with fear. What shall we say? The sight was such as could not be described. The wonder whether it was bridegroom's procession or the army of death. The bridegroom is a maniac, riding on a bull. Serpents, skulls, and ashes are his ornaments. His body is smeared with ashes and adorned with serpents and skulls. He is naked, has matted hair on his head, and is dreadful to look at. He is accompanied by ghosts and evil spirits, goblins, and fairies and demons with a frightful countenance. He who survives on seeing the bridegroom's procession is a man of great luck indeed, and he alone will witness the wedding of Umaji. They were the words uttered by the children from house to house. The parents smiled, for they knew that the children were talking of Shivji's retinue. They reassured the children in many ways and said, "Be not afraid, there is no cause for fear." The party, which had gone ahead to receive the bridegroom's procession, returned with the procession and assigned beautiful lodgings to all the guests. Mainaji, Parvatiji's mother, kindled auspicious lights for waving round the bridegroom, and the women accompanying her sang melodious songs of rejoicing. A salver of gold adorned by Mainaji's fair hands, and she proceeded to welcome Lord Hara with great delight. The women were seized with excessive fear when they saw Rudra, Shivji, in frightful accoutrements. They fled in great panic and entered the house, while the great Lord Shivji repaired to the lodgings of the bridegroom's party. Mainaji was so distressed at heart and sent for Parvatiji. With great affection, she seated her in her lap, and tears rushed to her eyes, which resembled a pair of blue lotuses. To think that the Creator, who has made you so beautiful, should have been stupid enough to give you such a raving madman for a bridegroom. How strange that the Creator, who has made you so lovely, should have given you a crazy fellow for a bridegroom. A fruit which should have adorned the wish-yielding tree is helplessly appearing on a thorny babula. Taking you in my arms, I would sooner fall from a mountain top, cast myself into the flames, or drown myself into the sea. Let my home be ruined, and let me earn a bad reputation throughout the world. But in no case would I marry you with this maniac, so long as there is life in me. All the ladies assembled there were distressed when they saw the consort of Himachal sad. Recalling the affection of her daughter, she wailed, wept, and exclaimed as below. What harm have I done to Naradji that he should have ruined my happy home and tendered such advice to Umaji as made her undergo penance for securing a crazy husband? In good sooth, the sage is passionless and without affection. He has no wealth, no dwelling, and no wife, and is indifferent to all. That is why he destroys others' homes. He has neither shame nor fear. What does a barren woman know of the pains of childbirth? Seeing her mother distressed, Bhavaniji addressed the following soft yet prudent words to her. Whatever is ordained by providence cannot be altered. Realizing this, be not worried. Mother, if I am destined to have a crazy husband, why should anyone be blamed for it? Can you alter the decree of providence? Therefore, take no reproach on you unnecessarily. Take no reproach on you. Cease lamenting. This is no occasion for it. The amount of joy and sorrow that has fallen to my lot, I must reap wherever I go. Hearing the soft and polite words of Umaji, all the ladies became sad. They blamed the Creator in many ways, and tears flowed from their eyes. On hearing the news, that very moment Himachal came to his house along with Naradji and the 7 seers. Then Naradji reassured them all, narrating to them the past history of Umaji. He said, Menaji, hear my true words. Your daughter is none else than Bhavaniji, the eternal consort of Shivji, mother of the universe. She is the unborn and imperishable divine energy, which has no beginning. She is Shambhuji's inseparable half. She creates, maintains, and then dissolves the universe and assumes the semblance of a material form of her own will. First, she was born in the house of Dakshji. Satiji was her name and charming was her form. Even in that incarnation, Satiji was married with Shankarji. The story is well known throughout the world. One day, while she was returning home with Shivji, she beheld Shri Ramji, who is a son, as it were, to the lotus-like race of Raghu. Bewildered by his sight, she did not listen to Shivji's advice and was beguiled into assuming the disguise of Sitaji. Shankarji repudiated her because she had offended him by assuming the disguise of Sitaji. Separated from Hara, she then visited the sacrifice undertaken by her father and burnt herself in the fire of yoga there. Now, reborn in your house, she has undertaken terrible penance for the sake of her Lord. Knowing this, give up all doubt. Girija, your daughter is ever beloved of Shankarji. When they heard Naradji's explanation, the sadness of all was dispersed in a trice, and news spread from house to house throughout the day. Then Menaji, her consort Himavan, rejoiced and bowed at Parvati ji's feet again and again. All the citizens, including men, women and children, young men as well as elderly people, were immensely delighted. Festive songs began to be sung in the city. Vases of gold of every pattern were displayed by all. Dishes of various kinds were prepared in accordance with the processes given in gastrological works. Is it ever possible to describe the varieties of dishes prepared in the house where lived Mother Bhavani ji? Himachal respectfully summoned all the members of the bridegroom's party, including Vishnuji, Brahmaji and other gods of all classes. The dinner guests sat in many rows and expert cooks began to serve. Finding the gods dining, batches of women began to banter and rail at them in pleasant strains.